Chapter Uno 1. After about 8 years of the constant crap, sometimes it being literal crap, he got thrown at him. He had two options. Try and seek the approval of those that would rather see him dead in a ditch, or say fuck it all. Seeing as at this current moment he was being chased by the ever stereotypical mob, there were even pitchforks and torches. He found himself leaning towards the latter option. Who might this person be? Well, our main character, of course. Is there like an angry mob store where they get a group discount or something? 'Cause this shit is just ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the pariah of Konohagakure no Sato. Most would be wondering why an 8-year-old kid would be running away from a mob of angry villagers out for blood at such a young age, and the answer is actually quite simple: QB. By the age of 8, young Naruto was much more mature and jaded than any child or person should be. But when about 89% of your own home village wants to have your carcass mounted on their wall, it kind of becomes your only option. Having lived on the streets after getting kicked out of the orphanage at the age of 4 and doing these fox hunts on a near monthly basis, Naruto knew damn near every nook and cranny of the village. Using said knowledge of his home village, Naruto knew the best place to lose the mob. Even if there were any ninja mixed among the crowd, he doubted they were of enough skill level to be any better than the villagers, otherwise he would have already been caught. Even still, as a precaution, he had picked out a route and a hiding spot that would lose even a seasoned chunin. Noticing that the beginning of his escape route was coming up, he ducked under a thrown rock and made a sharp left into an alleyway. Racing to the far end of the alley, he found the small hole in the chain-link fence that would allow his small body to squeeze through to the other side. Not leaving anything up to chance, the young blonde continued running as fast as his little legs could carry him to his next obstacle. Making another quick left and using the momentum he had built up, he threw himself onto his chest and slid through a small window into an abandoned warehouse. Naruto felt the sting on his chest notifying him that he had scraped himself up pretty badly with that last maneuver he had pulled, but the alternative of letting them catch him was far worse. Quickly looking for the ladder that would lead him to the roof of the building, he spotted it in a dimly lit corner and made a mad dash for it. Climbing it as fast as he could with his lung burning and his body aching all over, he finally pulled himself up onto a catwalk of sorts. Continuing on with his survival-inspired obstacle course, he ran to the end of the rusty and rickety catwalk and, finding the loose window pane, opened it and was welcomed back out into the moonlit world once more. A quick sprint later and he was opening and closing the door of a stairwell leading down to the building across from the warehouse he was just in. Considering this was the slums of Konoha, he highly doubted any of the members of the mob would still be following him at this point, so he jogged down the stairs, still being as quiet as possible just in case. Murphy's Law seemed to dictate his every move after all. Finally reaching the bottom of the staircase and consequently the end of his life or death Olympic sprint, Naruto could do nothing but collapse onto the cold concrete floor. Laying on his back, the only sounds that could be heard were those of the rats scurrying to and fro and Naruto's own ragged breathing. Even with his own Uzumaki enhanced stamina and QB adding to that, running for your life for the better part of a half hour would leave most anybody tired. I'd give you a 10 for execution, but your showmanship could use some touch-ups. Considering your age, though, I am still rather impressed. Echoed a deep yet smooth and even-toned voice from somewhere in the building. As soon as our little blonde protagonist had heard the beginning of the words, he had instantly frozen up. Even now Naruto held his eyes shut and slowed his breathing and hoped with all that he was that Murphy had not fucked him over yet again. As much as I would enjoy a game of opossum with you, I would much rather have a civil conversation. Finally the disembodied voice gained shape, though the shape wasn't exactly welcoming. The owner of the voice seemed to literally melt out of the shadows, shrouded in an all-black cloak that looked like it had seen better days. Regardless of its torn and ragged appearance, it still served the purpose of completely covering the figure from head to toe. The only thing really discernible about the figure was that he was damn near 6 foot, was male, and his body looked to be built to hit both hard and fast. Despite his rather bleak and short life, Naruto liked to think himself an optimist of sorts, but even he knew that there was no escape. While the figure had been talking to him, he brought up his mental map of the area and knew that any and all escape routes would require him to expend energy he just simply did not have at this moment. Even if he could somehow muster some magical force to give him an extra energy boost, he knew that based on what his instincts were telling him about this imposing dark figure standing only feet from him, he would not make it too far. Sighing, the sun-kissed blonde decided that if the stranger had wanted him dead, he would have not been getting up anytime soon, and if the stranger was just biding his time or drawing it out, Well, he was already dead, so might as well enjoy it. Naruto attempted to rise into a sitting position, but soon hissed in pain and groped at his chest in a bid to stop the horrible pulsing pain coming from there. Suddenly, the pain was replaced by a warm feeling washing over his body. Naruto would have fallen asleep if it were not for the rather loud sound of something metallic clattering at his side. Looks like when you pulled off that little slide maneuver of yours, you weren't exactly paying attention to what was on that floor. Turning his head to look at what had caused the metallic clang, he saw that the figure had pulled out a handful of thin, jagged pieces of some kind of metal. Mustering what breath he could, Naruto managed to mutter out a small, "Thank you." "No problem, kid. Now how about we get to that little chat of ours?" Reaching out his hands, the figure grabbed Naruto around the small of his back and raised him into a sitting position against the wall. The figure unceremoniously plopped himself down onto the floor in a cross-legged sitting position. Ensuing was a very awkward silence. Naruto tried to find out anything else about this mysterious man as subtly as he could with no success. The damn cloak hid everything from sight. Naruto couldn't even make out a face or piece of hair because of the cloak's hood. "So, I'm assuming you have some questions you want to ask me, huh?" began the strange man. Well, what did you do to get those metal shards out of me without, well, cutting me open?" questioned the young blonde. "Well, that's a pretty lengthy explanation, so in a nutshell, I healed you," provided the figure with an obvious chuckle at the end. Having to resist the very heavy urge to either sweat drop or facepalm, Naruto attempted to move the conversation forward by asking his next question. Well, why did you help me? I'm not ungrateful or anything, but, well, most people wouldn't do that for me." Well, that answer is pretty simple. I'm not most people. More specifically, I'm not some inbred, ass-backwards, ass-hat villager that can't tell the difference between a jailer and its ward, spoke the figure in a calm and even tone, which was surprising considering the colorful words he had just used. What now?" spoke the now thoroughly confused Uzumaki. Don't get him wrong, he agreed with the man's views on the villagers, but the whole bit about a prisoner and ward had left him at a loss. "I see, so you don't know. What do you know about the night of October 10th? spoke the now serious figure, though how Naruto knew that he had no clue because that damnable cloak. "My birthday?" asked the now even more confused blonde. "Yes, your birthday, and also the day of the Kyuubi attack," continued the shadowed figure. "Well, the Kyuubi attacked and the Yondaime Hokage fought it and eventually defeated it, saving the village but at the cost of his own life," Naruto stated. "Right?" he added, now feeling very suspicious. Shifting his body so that he leaned against the wall across from the young kid, he sighed and began. "Well, that is mostly true. You are missing some very vital parts to the story. First off, yes, the Yondaime fought the Kyuubi and died to defeat it, but the reason he died was because he used a kenjutsu that summoned the Shinigami. Now, not even the Shinigami could destroy the Kyuubi, as it is a huge massive construct of chakra, or in other words energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So instead the Yondaime did, well, something retarded. He chose a baby that had been born that night, and that was as far as the stranger got before he was interrupted by Naruto, and sealed it into the baby. And that baby was me, wasn't it?" Most thought Naruto to be some stupid kid who knew next to nothing. While that was true in regards to academics, when it came to practical matters regarding survival and problem-solving, the kid was a damn genius. Took him seconds to connect the dots. His birthday, the attack, the looks and stares, the fox hunts, and damn, how had he not figured this out sooner? There was just no way that there could be that many coincidences without there being a reason. With a heavy sigh, the stranger replied, "You got it, kiddo." Giving Naruto a few seconds to deal with this rather significant revelation, the stranger then continued, "So how you feeling there?" "Why?" was the soft reply. Giving another sigh, the figure stood to his full height and leaning against the same wall intoned, "Gonna have to be a little bit more specific than that short stuff. Why did he choose me for it? Was it convenience? Did my parents not care? Who were my parents? And oh, more lies," ended the now sobbing 8-year-old. The stranger couldn't blame the kid. The poor bastard had grown up an orphan, hated by most anyone he had ever encountered, and when he had found someone he thought he could trust, and who genuinely cared for him, he finds out the old monkey had only been lying to him. "I didn't really know your parents personally, but I can say this, when your mother found out she was pregnant with you, Not a one person could get her to shut up about how she was going to spoil you and treat you like a prince. When your father found out, he ran around the whole village screaming at the top of his lungs that he was going to be a father. Kid, your parents loved you more than anything in this world and would have done anything to make sure you were okay. At the end of his speech, the cloak wearer saw Naruto smiling the biggest smile possible and silently crying. What happened to them? Asked the still smiling and crying blonde. His parents loved him so obviously there was a damn good reason they weren't there for him. That's both complicated and simple. To start, your mother was a gorgeous and deadly redhead kunoichi by the name of Kushina Uzumaki. Chapter 2. Kanahagakure no Sato, the strongest hidden village in all of the shinobi world. And after having survived all 3 of the great ninja wars as well an attack from the strongest of the Bijou, it had rightfully earned that title. However, at this moment Konoha didn't seem to be the strongest ninja village but rather a city like any other. Shopkeepers were opening their stores for the day, foreign merchants were setting up tents and stalls. There was a blonde teen racing through the market district, mothers were walking with their children, and the sounds of someone vehemently cursing the evil beings known as paperwork could be heard throughout the village. Yes, just another day in Konoha. I can never just catch a damn break, huh? It's always gotta be something, spoke the blonde teen known as Naruto. A lot had happened in the years following Naruto's meeting with the strange cloaked man, though from an outside perspective it seemed as though nothing had ever changed. To most, Naruto was still the blonde idiot who some, though a significantly less amount, still wanted dead. Soon after the meeting with the man, Naruto had almost disappeared from Konoha. For about 2 years, the only time anyone saw him was when he would come into town for the occasional visit to Ichiraka Ramen, and after that not even the Umbu could find him. The Sandame knew this for a fact, as he had tried to find out what the blonde was doing and where he was going by having Umbu tail him. But try as they might, they could not find hide nor hair of the Jinchuriki unless he was seated at his stool in the ramen stand. Soon Sarutobi grew worried. The part of him that saw the little blonde Uzumaki as his grandson feared that something or someone had gotten their hands on him, and the Kami no Shinobi side of him feared much the same but for an entirely different reason. After all, it would not do to have Konoha's Jinchuriki fall into the wrong hands. Then after 2 years it seemed as though Naruto had moved back into Konoha from wherever he had been for those 2 years. A vast majority of the people who had hated Naruto had seemingly either forgotten about it or moved on with their lives in those years as well. This meant that by the time Naruto had moved back in, he was seen as just another villager. Only about 30% of the village still hated him, and less than half of those people would actually put any effort into showing it with more than just a dirty look or sneer. All in all, village life had continued on smoothly regardless of Naruto's being there or not, and much the same was happening in the academy as well. Where Naruto had been the dead last of his class before his mysterious vanishing, he was now an average student. He scored decently on tests, both practical and written, and his clothing even reflected this mundane new Naruto. Gone was the bright orange jumpsuit to be replaced by plain black shinobi pants with various pouches and taped at his ankles, a long-sleeved black shirt whose sleeves he rolled up to his forearms, black shinobi sandals, and black fingerless gloves with the Uzumaki spiral engraved on the metal plate. Though this was still Naruto, and regardless of how he changed, 2 things forever remained the same: his unhealthy obsession with ramen and his love for the color orange. In homage to his love of said fruit color, he wore 2 leather strips, those things Sasuke wears in the Chunin exam, on each wrist in a burned orange color. The only hiccup seen upon Naruto's return was his placement in the academy. He had not attended classes during his 2-year absence, and his performance before that was not exactly something one would want to present. The head of the academy, who actually saw the potential in the blonde, decided that it was for the best that he be placed in the class 2 years below the class of clan heirs. When he had found that out, Naruto had a small chuckle at the irony of a class full of the clan heirs. Seeing as he carried both Uzumaki and by extension Senju blood in him, with him in the class all of the founding clans of Konoha were being represented. Jumping back to the present, the reason for our blonde protagonist letting out a rather colorful string of words was because he had stayed up training to perfect one of the higher tier techniques the strange man had left to him and consequently woke up late. Now he was running at Chunin speeds to reach the academy in time for the exams today. He had no illusions of him not passing. When he had mysteriously vanished, he had spent those 2 years in the deepest, most forgotten forests of Hai no Kuni training to the ground. Thanks to the cloaked man, who he had later learned was named Vincent, and his present of several large scrolls each covering a branch of the shinobi arts and liberal use of kage bunshins. God, that technique was so OP. He had grown by leaps and bounds. He had exited that forest with the strength of a seasoned chunin in all areas of the shinobi arts excluding Iryojutsu, healing arts, and Genjutsu, which he was at mid-genin level with both. But hey, can you blame him? He held in his gut a 1,000-year-old massive construct of chakra, whose species were known masters of illusions, and who healed almost any wound save life-threatening ones in seconds to minutes, and even the life-threatening ones could be healed given a day or two of rest. And that was coming from a 10-year-old. When he had started living in the village, once more his training may have slowed in comparison to his time in the forest, what with various factions breathing down his neck, and all, but he had still maintained a rather rigorous training regimen. At this point in time, he was rather confident that he was at least mid-jounin level with almost all branches of the ninja arts. However, thanks to his Uzumaki blood, he was damn close to being a master at Fuinjutsu. Somewhere near his father's level, but not even close to his mother's near-sage level of mastery. Thanks to journals and notes from both his parents, which he had liberated from Sarutobi, and his own blood, his growth in the area was astounding. If anybody knew of Naruto's true skill level, they would call bullshit, both because of his track record and in the shinobi world. Knowledge may win some battles, but it was experience that won wars. There was no better example of this than their own Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The man had seen more in his lifetime than even he was comfortable with admitting. Generally speaking, the man was, yes, a powerful shinobi with his library of jutsu, but it was his experience and know-how that allowed him to use said jutsu to their maximum potential and saw him survive the 3 great ninja wars, had won him innumerable battles, and had earned him the title of Kami no Shinobi. To those naysayers, Naruto would simply scoff. He had not trained that hard and learned as much as he did without knowing that. Both his mother and father had overly stressed the dangers of arrogance in their world. His father had stated in one of his journals that an arrogant shinobi is a dead shinobi even if they don't know it yet. What people didn't know was that Naruto had indeed gained some battle experience these past 4 years. When he needed money, he would venture out, sometimes in a cloak reminiscent of the man who had saved his life, and bingo book in hand search out bounties. He started off only going after the smaller D-rank bounties in the first few months, but in the last year, he had begun to hunt some plenty powerful C-rank missing nin. That wasn't taking into account the many odd creatures he had begun encountering occasionally when he visited the older parts of Hai no Kuni. They all varied in size and various shades of black or dark green, but it was easy to see how they were all of the same species. The creatures all had tight, gaunt skin stretched across their frames, showing their bones in some sections, an elongated skull with sickly yellow eyes, a mouth full of teeth as sharp as any kunai, and they were nearly all covered in spikes that looked like broken bones that could be used as either a blunt weapon or a sawing blade depending on the individual creature. He did not know what the hell they were, but they were strong, fought in packs of 5 or 8, and were a pain to kill with their spiked hide. Back to the present once more, we see Naruto jump onto a tree branch next to the academy and leaping through a window land in his customary seat with arms folded and feet kicked up on the desk. "You can never just do anything halfway, can you?" came the giggling voice of one of Naruto's best friends, Yakumo Kurama. He had found the girl crying to herself when he was coming back from one of his many bounty hunts. Naruto could not stand the sight of a crying girl, and so had gone to try and comfort her. He may have succeeded if not for the Ito demon that occupied her mind, taking advantage of its container's broken state and attempting to use Naruto to escape. The Ito had made a very big mistake trying this. The demon may have been powerful in its own right, but it was nowhere even close to the level of power that Naruto's own demon wielded. Suffice to say that Kyuubi did not like to share, especially when it came to its Jinchuriki. When the Ito had tried to take over the blonde's mind via Genjutsu, it found itself face to face with a pissed Kitsune. Kyuubi had then proceeded to absorb a quarter of the illusion demon's Genjutsu power to give to its container. Since it was not a power of the bijous, the seal would not try and stop the chakra from spreading, allowing Naruto more power in the area of illusions. It then gave Naruto a seal much like his own, containing the rest of the demon's filth. Upon return to the living world, Yakumo knew that the preteen in front of her had helped to remove the evil from her and had lunged at him, crying and muttering, "Thank you," over and over into his cloak. Naruto merely patted her back and held her. When she had regained composure, he had explained what the seal he now had was, and that it would siphon the power the Ito had back into her at a stable rate, allowing her to grow into the power. She had asked him to help her with her training, and he had agreed to do so after suffering at the hands of the infamous puppy dog no jutsu. A year later he had asked why she thought he could help her when not even a Jounin could, and she had simply shrugged and said, "Because something was telling me that you could." After a year of training with Naruto, the two had become near inseparable, and Yakumo was one of 3 people who knew the real Naruto and his story. Confident in her own prowess, she had asked the Hokage to allow her into the academy alongside the blonde and other clan heirs. After a small display of her capabilities, he had readily signed the paper admitting her into the academy. "Well, it is Naruto, so is it really a surprise?" came the other giggling voice to his left, belonging to one Ino Yamanaka. She had seen how well the two had been doing, and in the last year of their academy days asked how. They had simply told her that they trained. Not fully believing them, she had demanded that they help her too then. After a small debate they had agreed, and a month into the hell known as Naruto's Kick Your Ass into Shape Boot Camp, patent pending, she could see the truth of their words. As she grew as a need to be, she also grew in maturity. She saw what her diet was truly doing to her body, how she had strained relationships with others for some boy, and so had set on a path to right her wrongs. Her parents were all too happy to see their little girl trying her hardest, and after a tearful hugging session they were a happy family once more. She had attempted to mend her friendship with Sakura, but the girl was too far gone as a fangirl, and was convinced Ino was just trying to one-up her. Seeing that it was a wasted effort, she had reconnected with her childhood friends Shikamaru and Choji. Soon, though, it was obvious how close Ino had grown to Naruto, and she was often seen with him around the village along with Yakumo. The two preteens had seen what feelings the other had for the young blonde and started a rivalry of sorts to see who would claim the QB container first. They still respected the other though and kept it small and trivial, or as small and trivial as they could. The older generation often joked that the two's rivalry closely resembled the rivalry of one hip, silver-haired Jounin and his youthful counterpart. "Why must the two of you be so mean to me?" spoke the now crying blonde. "Oh, hush up, you big baby," spoke the ever-bossy Yamanaka. "You act like we actually hurt your—" She started only to stare in shock and slight rage as she saw the black-clad form of her crush wailing into the arms of her brunette rival, who was currently consoling the blonde by stroking his hair, whispering things about the mean blonde not hurting him while she was around. "Oi! The hell?" she shouted at the two. "See, Ino, this is why he likes me more," Yakumo said while being as mature as possible. "Okay," she was sticking her tongue out at Ino, "but that's besides the point, right?" "He does not. Watch, I'll show you, you damn brunette." Rounding on the blonde, she instantly went from jealous and angry to sweet and innocent whilst pulling a bowl of ramen from somewhere. "Oh, Naruto, look what I got for our special day today," she damn near sang. The once wailing blonde was now happily munching on the bowl of ambrosia, to him at least, while leaning into the embrace of his fellow blonde. Seeing her plan working, she blew a raspberry at the brunette, who was currently pounding her head on the desk muttering, "How could I forget the damn ramen?" "All right, shut the hell up, you brats, and get ready," came the booming voice of Irika Umino, the class Chunin instructor. "Get ready. The Genin exams begin now." Across the village in the Hokage Tower, we find the Sandaime along with a group of Jounin instructors peering into his crystal ball, watching the very same exams. Blowing on his pipe of whatever the hell he had in there, the Kage spoke. "You heard the man. It begins. Let's see how this year's hopefuls do any." Chapter 3. The first part of the exams will be a written, testing your knowledge of our history and some battlefield situations you may find yourself in. Irika lectured as he and his assistant Mizuki passed out the test papers. "You will have 1 hour to finish this exam and no more. If you are caught cheating, you will be penalized 3 points off your test. If you are caught twice, you will fail this portion of the exam," continued Mizuki. As soon as all the papers had been passed out, Irika gave the signal to begin and the students were off. Right off the bat, a handful of the students from civilian families had earned a failed status. Irika and Mizuki of course noticed far more than just those students cheating, but considering their methods of doing so met the cheating standards of the test, they simply ignored them. The ones that they, or at least Irika, worried over were Naruto and his little group. Naruto seemed to have fallen asleep, much like a certain Nara not too far from him. Yakumo was merely looking out the window, and Ino was just filing her nails with a kunai. As time whittled down, more of the civilian students received a fail grade. Kiba had gotten caught once using Akamaru, Shikimaru had gotten caught trying to help Choji, and one of the fangirls had gotten caught attempting to help Sasuke, though he didn't much need it. Sakura had filled it out on her own. Prowess, if you could call it that. Shino. Well, no one knew what the hell he had been doing behind that collar and dark glasses, and Hinata had used her Byakugan to help her out. After the clock had run out, the instructors gathered the tests and Mizuki led the class outside for the other portions of the exam while Irika did some quick grading. Once outside, all the students proceeded to stretch or give some sign of relief, showing their happiness at finally getting out of the stuffy classroom. Alright, now we'll be moving on to the field exams. First up, we got accuracy tests. You will be given 10 kunai and then 10 shuriken. The goal is to aim for the center of the dummy. We will be going in alphabetical order, so Shino, you're up first. With that, Mizuki stood aside with a clipboard ready to write down the marks. Shino, in the style of a true Aburame, merely flung the kunai in groups of 2, showing as little effort as possible. He did the same with the shuriken, earning him a score of 17 to 20. One by one, the students went up with the clan air group, earning no less than 15 to 20 and Sasuke earning a 19 to 20, though Yakumo and Ino scored the same, which surprised everybody in the class. It was finally Naruto's turn, and deciding to show off a bit, he grabbed all 10 kunai in between his fingers and casually tossed them. Grabbing the shuriken in a show of speed and dexterity, he fired them off not even a millisecond later. None of the weapons hit the designated target, and most of the class was laughing at the blonde's mess up. Yakumo and Ino had to contain themselves from kicking all their asses for being dumbass. Hinata was shyly thinking some weird Naruto obsessive shit that cannot be mentioned with children around, and the other clan heirs merely stood to the side shaking their heads. Naruto UFAI was as far as the smirking Chunin got before he was interrupted by the voice of his fellow instructor. Actually, Naruto may not have hit the designated target, but he has demonstrated something even better. Each of his weapons has hit either a vital organ, an area that would leave the enemy near death, or a one-hit kill spot. So I think he deserves full marks on this one. Don't you, Mizuki? Spoke the Chunin. Gritting his teeth in anger, the scarred Chunin replied with a strained, "You're right, Irika. Kid's good, I'll give him that," spoke a certain Cyclopean Jounin. "You are correct, my eternal rival. The young Uzumaki's flames of youth burn dash. Damn it, guy. Shut the hell up. Now is not the time for your fucking flames of youth." Such unyouthful words coming from a lady. Anko, a woman such as yourself should not utter such dash. For Kami-sama's sake, if you don't shut the hell up, guy, I will personally make you more aerodynamic by removing what makes you a man. Let's get back to those genin exams, yeah? There's no way the idiot scored better than my Sasuke Kayuin. Guess who? Sakura, I swear if you utter one more word, I will show you why spies fear getting a visit from someone like my daddy. And let me tell you this, we Yamanaka give a new meaning to the term mindfucking. Got it. After the Yamanaka heir had said her piece, many students had gained a new fear of crossing Ino. Moving on then, spoke the slightly fearful pineapple-haired Chunin. In his short stint as an Ambu, he had heard many things about the famed Yamanaka interrogators, and suffice to say even Ibiki feared them and their Kekai Genkai. We will now be moving on to the Taijutsu section of the exams. You will either be paired with me or Mizuki based on a random drawing. You will have to last anywhere between 1 to 2.5 minutes in the ring to pass. No weapons or jutsu of any kind are allowed, though you may use chakra to enhance your body. If you step out of bounds or are soundly defeated by either of us before the time limit, then you will fail this section. Keep in mind you must pass at least 3 of the 4 exams in order to receive a headband from this academy. Line up in any order, and when it is your turn, draw a name from the hat. In groups of 2, the line thinned until only the Uchiha heir and the Uzumaki heir remained. Naruto decided to go first and, sticking his hand in the hat, drew out the first piece of paper he felt. Unfurling the paper, he read aloud with a grin, "I got you, Irika-sensei. Guess that means you get Mizuki then Sasuke." And to that the emo merely chened. Yup, Sasuke officially had his own verb. Strolling into the ring, Naruto and Irika bowed to each other before assuming the academy stance. "Don't go easy on me now, Naruto. You got it?" spoke the grinning Chunin. "Well, I don't know you are getting on in years there, sensei," joked the blonde genin-to-be. "Naruto, I am so kicking your ass for that comment now. What's that, old ma dash? Hajime." And with that, Irika raced towards Naruto at about genin level speeds. Deciding to start off simple, Irika began his assault with a simple punch aimed at the blonde's face. Naruto had of course seen this coming miles away and decided he wanted to reveal some of what he could truly do to his pseudo-brother. A short hop later and Naruto was standing on Irika's outstretched hand. Striking at near Jounin speeds, Naruto aimed a kick to the side of Irika's head. Now he may have quit Umbu years ago, but that didn't mean his skills had dulled too much, and with a turn of his wrist and ducking his whole body, Irika held Naruto by the ankle and using momentum attempted to slam the black-clad academy student into the ground. The Jinchuriki may have been surprised at this turn of events, but he quickly recomposed himself and seeing what was happening stretched out both arms and pumped a bit of chakra through the limbs, allowing him to stop his body from meeting the ground without injury. Using the chakra built up in his arms, he pushed back against Irika and using his free leg donkey kicked his sensei in the solar plexus, successfully knocking the wind out of the Tanchunin and freeing his other leg. Taking advantage of his sensei's lack of air and surprise, he twisted his body from being on the ground on all fours and in little more than milliseconds was in the air with a kick heading straight for the instructor's ribs. Irika, not wanting to get hit in the chest twice in a row, brought up his left arm and blocked the kick aimed at his ribs. To his surprise, he actually felt the bones in his left limb rattle from the power of his student's kick. Sending chakra through his left arm to dull the pain and making note to dodge instead of block any further attacks, the scarred man used the same hand he had used to block to grab Naruto's outstretched hand and use it to pull the blonde into his range. With Naruto quickly heading towards him, Irika twisted around so his back was to his pseudo-little brother and forcefully rammed his right elbow into the surprised academy student's gut, sending spittle all over his shoulder. Trying to not give the blonde room to counter, Irika kept his head wrapped tightly around Naruto's wrist and sending his right arm under the armpit of his student, he once more tried to slam the QB container into the ground. This time Naruto let his legs fall to the ground, first absorbing the shock and once again stopping him from meeting Mother Earth. Letting his body go completely slack on the ground, he used his free hand to grab onto Irika's arm that was still latched onto his own and curling into a semi-ball. He pulled himself up and his sensei down to introduce the bottom of his sandals to Irika's face. The last thought Irika had before he made out with Naruto's sandals was, "Fuck, this is gonna hurt like a dash." As the last 2 rounds of the taijutsu test had started, many of the students assumed that the match between Sasuke and Mizuki would be the one to watch. But with Mizuki trying to suck up to the Uchiha air by going easy on him and leaving all kinds of openings in his attacks, it was over before Naruto and Irika had even started theirs. With that, all the students turned to watch their other sensei fight with Naruto. Based on Naruto's standing in the class, the students had assumed it was going to be nothing special, but boy were they surprised when Naruto had, in the blink of an eye, stood on Irika's arm and lashed out with a kick aimed at their sensei's head. As the match continued, the jaws of everyone there continued to drop lower and lower. Even Yakumo and Ino were surprised at the level of power the two were fighting at. They knew Naruto was strong, but he had never showed them how truly skilled he was. Everyone was even more surprised with how evenly matched the two were. The students of course knew that their instructor was strong in his own right, but with as comical and boring as he seemed most of the time, they would have never imagined that Irika could fight at such a level. In the Hokage Tower, the group of Jounin and even the Hokage himself were shocked at the level of skill being displayed by an academy student and a Chunin instructor. Some among the group knew that Irika had been in Umbu at one time, but thought that after years of teaching at the academy that his skills would have dulled considerably, but here he was grappling and fighting at a mid-Jounin level. Even more surprising was the fact that one Naruto Uzumaki was the one responsible for pushing Irika to fight at that level. Now what the academy students didn't realize was that this was even more shocking because this was pure taijutsu being used. Many of the Jounin and even the Hokage himself suspected that had this been an anything-goes kind of match, there would have been a great deal of collateral damage as well as many more surprises. This also confirmed for Sarutobi that Naruto had been hiding a great deal of his true strength, among other things. Normally this wouldn't bother him, but considering this was both someone he considered his grandson and the village's Jinchuriki, he couldn't very well let it slide without knowing the true extent of the young teen's power. It also didn't help that Naruto had stopped referring to him as Gigi, and their bond had become strained when the young blonde had Fuck. He knew something had happened when Naruto had vanished. Looks like he would need to have a talk with the blonde Uzumaki soon. As Naruto was helping Irika walk back to where the rest of the class was, his instinct screamed that something was going to happen soon. Taking note of it, he broadened the area that his senses normally encompassed to a slightly larger area. He also made sure to activate his empath sense as well to be even safer. Naruto had always been able to get a feel for what intentions people had for him ever since he could walk, but it wasn't until he met Vincent that he understood why. It seemed that being an empath was somewhat of an Uzumaki trait, and it had appeared in several of the Uzumaki clan's greatest clan heads to some degree. He guessed that he must have inherited it from his mother, and thanks to having the mightiest of the tailed beasts stuck in his gut, the sense had been amplified to even greater heights. He wondered if it would be passed down to any children he had like a Kekai Genkai. For the moment he just put that thought into the Ask QB later pile. Alright class, on to the last portion of the exam. You will be asked to perform the basic 3 Academy Jutsu, Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin. If you have anything else you feel would showcase another skill you have, this would be the time to do so. Anything you show will be counted as extra credit, announced Irika. Majority of the civilian students fared decently enough on at least 2 out of the 3 jutsu, and a handful of them even had some other jutsu or skill they had learned elsewhere earning them their headbands. The clan heirs all did perfect on the basic 3, and all of them had a clan jutsu to show off what their clan was known for. Deciding to return to his average performance again, Naruto performed the 3 jutsu as asked, and as extra credit performed a minor wind jutsu that would put out campfires or cover tracks, which disappointed Irika, Yakumo, and Ino as they had wanted to see what else Naruto could do. Wrapping his arms around the shoulders of his 2 best friends, and with his patented foxy grin on, Naruto said, "So girls, we've passed our genin exam and are free the rest of today. What say we go celebrate?" "Sorry, Ruto, but Daddy and my mom wanted to have a family dinner to celebrate tonight," sighed the slightly saddened Ino. She loved her family dearly, but she was still very tempted to go with her crush. "Yeah, my aunt and uncle wanted to do the same. Sorry, Narukuin, but I promise we'll do something together tomorrow, okay?" Yakumo said, trying to cheer up the blonde. Though his foxy grin was now gone, he still smiled to cover up his sadness in front of the girls. "Yeah, of course. Don't even worry about it. You 2 go home and have fun, alright?" With a hug and a kiss on the cheek from both girls, Naruto found himself alone. He had come to accept his life as an orphan long ago, and thanks to his somewhat sensei Vincent, he had gained closure with the matter. That still didn't make it any less depressing on days like these. As he mused on what it would have been like had the events the night of his birth not happened, he found himself in one of the taller trees surrounding the village walls. As he was gazing at the moon, his senses flared, and his empath sense, he really should come up with a name for it, warned him that there was someone feeling very anxious and devious close by. Turning around and sending chakra into his eyes to allow him to see further, he spotted a man he didn't really like and who didn't really like him carrying something he shouldn't. Deciding to take out some of his more negative feelings on the bastard, he jumped down onto a lower branch and waited. Kami-sama, this guy was slow. Right as Naruto's patience was about to run out, Mizuki burst out of the foliage with a crazed grin on his face. Naruto's sweat dropped at the fact that Mizuki hadn't even noticed him yet. God, how the hell did this guy even become a chunin? Shrugging and deciding to take advantage of the situation at hand, Naruto waited for the right moment before he leapt up and axe-kicked Mizuki, sending him plummeting to the forest floor. Naruto waited for a bit before he heard the satisfying sound of the traitor's body hitting the floor and the subsequent scream of pain accompanying it. Chuckling to himself, he calmly leapt down to the forest floor to find Mizuki struggling to get out of the crater he found himself in. Whistling, Naruto began, "I guess I put more power into that than I thought. Oops, haha." "What the hell? What the fuck are you doing here, demon?" came the pained voice of Mizuki. "Ouch, Mizuki, you wound me," Naruto said with a fake hurt look. "And I was actually just out enjoying the lovely night air when I happen upon you with what looks like the village's scroll of sealing. Now, I may have just gotten my Hitai 8, but I'm pretty sure that chunins don't have that kind of clearance." Finally getting into a standing position, even though he was shaking and hurting all over, he grunted out, "Fuck you, demon brat. I won't even be marked as a missing nin if I kill you here and now." Sweat dropping once more, Naruto began, "Okay, seriously, how stupid are you? First off, the majority of the villagers don't even give a shit about what I do anymore, and look at where you are and what happened all of like a minute ago." Scoffing, Mizuki defended, "That was just because you caught me off guard. There's no way you could actual dash," was as far as Mizuki got before he was interrupted by Naruto's foot meeting his face. The Chunin-turned-traitor was then reminded that Hai no Kuni's trees were some of the thickest and hardest in the whole elemental countries, and it didn't look like he was getting up anytime soon. "Are you fucking serious?" Face-palming, Naruto sighed and gathered the traitor on one shoulder and the scroll of sealing on the other. He had no need for it because most of the jutsu didn't suit his style, and any that did were already in either the scrolls Vincent gave him or in the ones his parents had left to him. Guess it's time for that talk with Sarutobi. Probably what all my senses were warning me about. Sarutobi was a very patient man, and if all you did for most of your day was sit behind a desk and do paperwork, you'd be patient too. Or insane. Probably both. But his young pseudo-grandson was testing this patience. He knew that Naruto knew that he wanted to see him for very important business, and Hiruzen knew damn well that Naruto was far from slow if that short fight with Mizuki was anything to go by, so why the blonde teen still wasn't in his office after 10 minutes was trying his patience. Finally, a highly frustrated Hiruzen got up and announced, "Okay, that's it, I am tired of waiting." And dash. Waiting for who, ya old monkey? Only 4 people had ever had the gall to call him that, and with 2 of them dead and another traveling the countries to maintain a spy network that left only one person who that voice could belong to. Turning around, he spotted the teen he had been waiting for, casually sitting on a chair in the corner of his office munching on a bowl of ramen. He then spotted the body of one unconscious silver-haired traitor along with the scroll of sealing haphazardly thrown on the sofa next to said teen. I'm getting way too old for this shit, lamented one very stressed Hokage. "I'll say, I've been here for the past like 3 minutes waiting on you to notice me," chimed the Jinchuriki. "I'm not even going to try and dignify that with a response. Now first off, boo." With that, 3 shadows appeared standing as straight as possible in front of the Hokage. "I want 2 of you to escort Mizuki to the T&I department and find out exactly who he was working for, and I want the last one of you to take the scroll of sealing back to its proper place in my library." With a small, "Hi!" the 3 boo along with the scroll and Mizuki vanished from the room. Turning his gaze upon the now serious blonde, he began, "Now Naruto, we need to have a talk. First, I would like to congratulate you on completing your first A-rank mission. Your mission pay will be deposited into your account before the night is out. However, we have more pressing matters to attend to." Sarutobi noticeably sagged in his chair and assumed a look that showed how old the man actually was. "What happened to you? First you disappear for 2 years, and when you come back you're hiding things from me. You stop calling me G-." "Let me stop you there, Sarutobi." Naruto cut in with an uncharacteristically serious tone and stern look. "I'm gonna tell you this right now. Where I went and what I did is frankly none of your business. All I will tell you is that I received help from someone, and that same someone revealed to me things that had been kept away from me for far too long." Sarutobi noticeably cringed at that. "I feared that that was the case. I take it you know everything then?" "Everything from the fox to who my parents were, yes. Something you continuously lied to me about on several occasions. And that is the reason I no longer call you Gigi. You lost all the respect I had for you that day. But Naruto, you have to understand why I did it." "I understand perfectly, Hiruzen. You were protecting the village from IWA and Kumo coming for blood. And don't say it was for me. Had I been just any other child, you wouldn't have cared. It's because I'm the village's weapon on a leash that you did all this. But what you don't understand is that though you may have saved the village and me from IWA and Kumo, but you damned me to a hell designed by the very same village you had sworn to protect. Naruto, they were just idiots that knew too much because someone thought it was a good idea to blab who the container of the demon was. The same demon who not hours before had nearly decimated the whole village. But your father wanted for me to be seen as a hero, yes, but that's not what he had in mind. Why do you think nobody knew that my mother was the container? Why no one knew that Mito Uzumaki was the container? They were powerful kunoichi married to equally powerful shinobi, Kages no less, and even they feared what would happen if the secret were to get out. At this point, Sarutobi's age, as well as the sins he had committed, had really begun to show on his face. Even sadder was that at this moment he had stopped being the Hokage and was now just an old man who had made far too many mistakes in his long life. "Please, I'm sorry, Naruto," cried the broken man with tears running down his face. "I had your best intentions in mind. I never meant for any of this to happen. At one time I loved you like a grandfather. You were one of the few people I would have given my life for. I respected you. At one time you were truly the Kami no Shinobi, a respected and feared man. Now all I see is an old man who is too afraid to rock the boat for fear of another war breaking out. Maybe you should listen to yourself for once, sneered Naruto. You're always preaching about Konoha and the will of fire, and you're right. There is a reason we came out of all three of the shinobi world wars not just alive but as the strongest of the hidden villages. Why we were able to survive an attack from the strongest of all the bijou and come back from it. This village stands as the strongest for a damn good reason. It's because we fought tooth and nail to earn that title. As Naruto finished venting all that he had pent up for years to the old Hokage, he walked to the window and opened it. And you're right, you did have my best intentions at heart, but remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Goodbye, Gigi. With that said, Naruto leapt out into the village, leaving the broken man. As Naruto spoke his last words, something inside the man had snapped. I have lived my life regretting far too many things. I'm no better than Tsunade trying to drown her sorrows in liquor and gambling. It was because of this sorry state I was in that Orochimaru got away and is now one of our biggest threats. Enough is enough. I am the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. I earned the title of Kami no Shinobi through blood, sweat, and tears. This is MY Village. They are MY Ninja, thought the now revitalized man. Looking at where Naruto last stood, he thought, Naruto, I have made a mess of not just your life but of so many others, and for that I am sorry. I may never earn the right to be called your Gigi again, but I promise you that I will try my damnedest to become the man you had once respected. With a steely look in his eyes, he began to work. And on that night, a fire not seen in decades began to burn once more. The Kami no Shinobi was back. Chapter 5. Today was the day that some jounin looked forward and others despised, Genin Assignment Day. Even those that weren't going to be jounin senseis were here to see how the Genin hopefuls had done, as well as who Kakashi would be failing this year. Of course, said Scarecrow wasn't even here yet, which wasn't surprising in the least. Finally, the Hokage walked in, and immediately all talking stopped, and not out of respect for the Hokage but more out of shock at the aura they were feeling from the man. Many of the younger jounin were surprised at the almost oppressive aura the Sandaime was putting out, and others like Asuma and Guy hadn't felt this aura around him since the Third Great Shinobi War when the man was much younger. Asuma merely smirked and thought, looks like Dad got his fire back. This is gonna be interesting. Right as the Hokage had opened his mouth to speak, Kakashi shunshined into the middle of the room, book in hand, and lazily drawled out, Sorry for being late, Hokage-sama. I was dash. Enough! Hiruzen shouted, flaring his chakra slightly, showing them why he was Hokage. I have heard enough of your excuses, Kakashi. I've let it slide before because you are one of the more powerful shinobi we have in our forces, but no more. You are a ninja of this village and I am your Hokage. When I tell you to be somewhere at a certain time, you will be there 5 minutes early. Do you understand me, jounin? Kakashi noticeably straightened his posture and instantly put his book away. Hi. It won't happen again, Hokage-sama. And with a bow, Kakashi walked back to his fellow jounin. He may be strong and Sarutobi may have aged, but he had no doubt that the Hokage could still bat him around like a pinball if he so chose. Now, like I was about to say, we are here to assign genin teams. As usual, those jounin who either volunteered to become senseis or were persuaded to do so, at that he cast a glance at Kakashi, have already voted on who they would like. So those of you who chose to teach these genin, please step forward. At this, Asuma, Kurenai, Kakashi, Heiei, and Gunma stepped up in front of the Hokage's desk. I have reviewed the teams you all wanted, and normally, I would agree with your choices. However, in light of certain events, I have chosen to make some changes. Many of the jounin senseis were surprised at this. They thought that they had given justifiable enough reason to get those that they had wanted. Asuma, you had wanted to train the next Inoshikacho team, but I fear that our enemies will have by now made proper countermeasures to combat said team. Instead, you will be getting Team 10 consisting of Shino Aburame, Chaji Akimichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. At this, some of the jounin gasped. They had figured that Kakashi would have gotten the Uchiha heir due to the Sharingan. Even Asuma was surprised by this and showed it by asking, Dad, you sure about this? I mean, I can see your logic, but the Uchiha? I'm hardly capable of teaching a Sharingan user. Besides, what would the council say? You are correct. You aren't capable of teaching a Sharingan user. But you won't be teaching a Sharingan user. Young Sasuke has as of yet to even unlock his family's Dojutsu, and he will already have more than enough resources to train said Dojutsu when that time comes. I am giving him to you so that he can learn to fight without the use of his Sharingan. Hiruzen calmly spoke. Secondly, what of the council? I am the Hokage and these are my ninja to command as I see fit, and they have no say in these matters. I see. Sorry for doubting you, Pops. With that said, Asuma rejoined the line of Jounin. Moving forward, Ms. Yuhi, you will be getting Team 8, which will be Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and Kiba Inazaka, though the young Hyuga is under a probation of sorts. Thoroughly confused and worried about what the Hokage meant by probation, the red-eyed beauty inquired, "A Hokage-sama? What do you mean by probation?" That's quite simple. The heiress is far too shy for this line of work. If she has not made a significant amount of progress in said area as well as skill, then she is to be removed from the program and recommended to join the Medcorps instead. Shocked and afraid to say more, Kurenai merely nodded and assumed her place in line once more. Now Kakashi, you will be receiving the team of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As he said this, many Jounin had their jaws hit the floor. The kid was the son of their yondaime? After thinking about how similar the two looked for all of 4 seconds, those same Jounin face-palmed. The kid was a damn carbon copy of Minato. How had no one realized it? Kakashi was surprised, but not that Naruto was his sensei's son. He had known that for years and had tried his damnedest to adopt the child, but was thwarted by the council at every turn. The most he could do was sneak the kid presents and protect him from mobs when he could. Kakashi was surprised that Sarutobi was finally releasing that information. He guessed the kid already knew about it, so there was no reason to keep it a secret, especially now that he was a genin. Waiting for the sudden outbursts to end, Hiruzen continued, as well as Ino Yamanaka and Yakumo Karama. You will be Team 7. Hayate and Genma received teams comprising of those with civilian backgrounds that had also passed the genin exams. As team announcements drew to a close, most of the Jounin left to either prepare a rough lesson plan and test for their genin or do Jounin things. However, Kakashi stayed behind after receiving a glance from the Hokage. You wanted to speak to me, Hokage-sama? Inquired the silver-haired Jounin. Leaning into his chair and taking a puff off his pipe, Hiruzen spoke. Yes, I did. Thanks to certain events, it has come to my attention that Naruto is stronger than what he would have us believe. Much stronger than that. Sir, if I may? He did beat Irika in an all-out taijutsu match. Also, he is their child. It's not really that much of a surprise if he's stronger than most, is it? Asked the confused Jounin. Normally yes, but there are reasons I am telling this to you. First off, as I said earlier, you are one of, if not the strongest Jounin that this village has to offer. In a few more years, I have no doubt you could claim this hat if you so chose. I am not saying this to praise you, but to justify why I gave you the team I did. Hiruzen took a breather and relaxed into his chair more. Yakumo a few years ago was completely incapable of most any kind of physical activity. Kurenai had tried to help her much like Guy helped his young protege, but where Guy succeeded, Kurenai failed. The girl had then become consumed by her darker emotions, and with as potent as her bloodline was her mind, created a defense to stop her power from tearing her apart. Sadly, the defense it chose took the form of a demon named the Ito. The Ito would have consumed her and went on a rampage using her powers to try and destroy our village, had she not met a certain blonde. Sarutobi took a pause here. Kakashi saw the look of sadness flash across the man's eyes as he mentioned the blonde teen, but chose not to say anything out of respect for the man and his personal life. I don't know what Naruto did, but only a year later she had gained near full mastery of her Kekai Genkai, and her physical prowess, while not too impressive, was bordering on genin level. Considering the girl was not too far off from being handicapped by her condition a mere year before makes it all that more astonishing. The Scarecrow was of course surprised by this. He had after all seen the girl perform, and she was at least at Chunin level with her taijutsu, as well as with her weapons proficiency. He could only imagine how strong she was when she went all out. Ino Yamanaka was at one time a Sasuke fangirl, and was one of the more fervent of the bunch as well. In the last year of the academy she made friends with Naruto, and just like Yakumo there was a massive jump in power. The only thing that was keeping her even slightly better than her once friend Sakura was her clan jutsu, but by the last month of the academy the girl was in the running for Rookie of the Year. Sir, I understand that you've given me quite the powerful bunch of genin, but why are you telling me this? Sighing, Sarutobi continued, We had no idea. Scratch that we still don't know exactly how powerful Naruto truly is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was closing in on your level of power. The fact that he's known about the Kyuubi and his heritage since he was 8 has allowed him a massive amount of time to train. He has played an active role in training those two girls. If he was smart enough to mask his true power so he could slip under our radar, I have no doubts he convinced those two to do the same as well. What I am saying, Kakashi, is do not take these three lightly. They may well be at Jounin level already, and Naruto could be even past that if he has learned to harness the power of his ward. Then why did you give them to me, Hokage-sama? I fail to see why they aren't Chunin already, or at least Tokubetsu Genin. Questioned the still confused Scarecrow. If they had managed to attain that level of power on their own, what the hell would they need him for? It's actually a mutual relationship. I'm hoping that they'll rub off on you and give you a reason to get even stronger than you are, and I hope that you will guide them on the path they have chosen to walk. They may be powerful, but they are still just young children about to be thrown into a world of liars, thieves, rapists, and murderers wearing the guise of heroes. You know this just as well as I, Kakashi. They will need someone to guide them through those trying times we all go through. Hi, I understand, Hokage-sama. If I may be excused now, Kakashi said as he bowed. Yes, you may go. Wow, Mizuki really went down like that? Spoke a sweat-dropping Ino. Yeah, I know the guys was pretty weak compared to us, but geez. Spoke an equally sweat-dropping Yakumo. Wrapping her arms around Naruto's left arm, Yakumo continued. But this is Naruto we are talking about, and he is my amazingly strong guy after all. Yakumo said as she laid the sweet innocent girl act on as hard as one possibly could. Whoa, wait a minute. Your amazingly strong guy? He's my strong guy. Once again doing one of her famous 180s in personality, she stuck Naruto's right arm in the middle of her blossoming cleavage and batting her eyelashes she continued. Isn't that right, Ruto-kun? She may be just 12, but damn was she already growing in the right places. It also didn't help that, as ninja with higher amounts of chakra, they naturally matured much faster than average people. And boy was Ino using that to her advantage. Yakumo was as usual left pouting as she lacked in the curves department. That's not to say she wasn't an attractive girl in her own right though. Where Ino was sultry and sexy, Yakumo was classy and refined. Though she wasn't being very refined at the moment, as she was currently tugging her crush towards herself while childishly sticking her tongue out at the rival for her crush's affection. Naruto was, as usual, left sweat dropping and at a loss for words. He dearly cared for both of the girls but could never find the words to tell them that. He was rather stunted in the affection department after all. Wait a minute. At this, Ino let go of Naruto's arm she had been tugging at, causing the blonde to tumble into Yakumo, landing them in a very compromising position. Yakumo was far from being a prude, but she wasn't a perv either. Never mind the mini collection of Ika she had under her bed. Asterisk cough asterisk, but finding herself underneath the body of her crush centimeters away from touching lips, and it was understandable why the poor girl was blushing as much as she was. Before she could take advantage of the moment, Naruto was yanked to his feet by one very bossy Yamanaka. Making sure to get Ino back at a later time, she stood and dusted herself off. You got some questions to answer, mister? Demanded the demanding Yamanaka. I do, Naruto said as he shook. He knew damn well the power a pissed female could have, and even he wasn't strong enough to fight that battle. Courageous he may be, but stupid he was not. Yeah, how come you didn't tell us you were that strong? At this, Yakumo chimed in with a, yeah. What do you mean? Questioned Naruto. Well, we knew you were pretty powerful, but we never assumed you were that powerful. I mean, the way you and Irika were trading blows the other day looked like two-seasoned jounin going at it. And Yakumo helpfully nodded at this. Nervously scratching the back of his head and chuckling, Naruto said, Oh yeah, that hee. Thought you two would forget about that thing. Naruto-kun, that's mean, pouted Yakumo. Are you trying to keep secrets from us? Asked Ino as she invaded his personal space. Frantically waving his hands, the blonde Kyuubi container attempted to defend himself. No, it's just, well, I never really had a reason to reveal my strength. But I guess with us being shinobi now, we're gonna find ourselves in some tricky positions, so I guess I should share, huh? Gee, you think? The ever-bossy Ino scoffed. All right, well, dash. The genin had enjoyed a good weekend of either relaxing or beginning some more intensive training, but nonetheless they were back in their classroom one last time to get their team assignments. Irika walked in with clipboard in hand and a warm smile on his face. He had seen these kids go from snot-nosed brats to snot-nosed brats who could kill someone with their bare hands and defy all laws of nature at a whim. Ah, the joys of being a teacher. Clearing his throat, he attempted to get the class's attention and was prepared to use his infamous demon head jutsu, but was surprised when they actually shut up when he asked. He knew that they had realized what kind of life they were going to be walking into and that they would need to be at their best. Or they just wanted him to get it over with already. Yeah, that last one was probably it. Oh well, he had done his part. It was up to their Jounin senseis to knock some more sense into them. Alright class, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I have seen you all grow up into some talented need to be, and I can say with the utmost confidence that all of you here have the potential to do great things. Who knows, maybe one of you is the next Hokage, or maybe your team will be the next Sannin. But know this, no matter what, watch out for each other. In this world of ours, friends and comrades may be the only thing between you and death. Cherish the bonds you make. You are now ninja of the leaf, so wear your Hitai 8 with pride. You are the next carriers of the will of fire. My generation has had our time. The future of Konohagakure no Sato is in your hands now. Do us proud, Irika announced with the utmost amount of pride in his voice. The genin all looked at each other and nodded with the biggest smiles on their faces. They had done it. Years in the academy had all paid off. Today was the day. With that out of the way, I'll begin announcing teams. First up with Hey8 Gecko as sensei, we have Team 1 with, and on Irika went down the list until he had finally reached the clan air groupings. He may have said that they all had the future in their hands, and he meant it, but he especially meant it to these kids. They were to be the future leaders of the founding clans of Konoha after all, and as a consequence would have a direct hand in the laws and policy making of this very village. Team 7 will consist of Yakumo Kurama. Yakumo grinned and crossed her fingers, hoping she got her best friend and crush on her team. Ino Yamanaka. The two girls high-fived with grins. They may be rivals for Naruto's heart, but that didn't mean they hated each other. Far from it. Yakumo had lived a sheltered life and had never had any real friends. She of course eventually became friends with Naruto, but he was a guy and her crush. When she met Ino, it was different. She could talk to her about girl things that she couldn't very well talk to Naruto about. Ino was much the same. Sakura had never been a good girlfriend in the first place, so Yakumo was her first actual best girlfriend. And the final member of your team will be... Irika paused intentionally. He had to milk this moment for all it was worth. Both the girls latched onto Naruto like he would disappear at any moment. Naruto Uzadash was as far as he got before the two girls screamed in happiness that they had gotten their crush and pseudo-sensei on their team. They may be kunoichi now, but they were still preteen girls with a crush after all. Naruto merely sat there with his foxy grin on. He had worried that they wouldn't be placed on the same time, but maybe this was the Sandame trying to apologize to him. He knew that that was probably the case, but he also knew that the man may also have ulterior motives. Alright, you two. Let me finish ya? Now, as I was saying, your final team member will be Naruto Uzuma. I'm so fucking stupid. The genin were surprised, as Irika was never one to curse without good reason, and he was now also pounding his head on the desk. What the hell was he doing? Naruto narrowed his eyes at this. Unless our sensei is the Hokage himself, there is no way that Irika would have reacted like that. There has to be something to this, but what was... Oh shit, the old man did he? Taking a break from making a spectacle of himself, he gave Naruto a pointed look and asked, "Did you know about this, Naruto?" "Know about what, Irika-sensei?" asked a very suspicious blonde. "Your full name." At this, all the students turned to look at Naruto. He had a longer name? They had never paid much attention to him, and since there wasn't an Uzumaki clan compound, they had just assumed his parents were either civilians or forgettable ninja that had died when he was young or something. Naruto sighed before he replied, "Yes, since I was 8. My old sensei told me the whole story." Whoa, wait, Naruto had a sensei when he was young? That explained how he showed up and started doing as decently as he was, as well as his 2-year absence from the village. But what was this whole thing about his name? "Guess the Hokage wanted it to be known finally, so do you mind?" inquired Aoka. If he told these kids, there was no doubt the news would spread like wildfire among the village. Knowing the villagers, they would either riot in denial, though not very likely, or turn Naruto into a damn celebrity. And he knew Naruto wasn't comfortable with either of those options. "Yeah, sure. I can handle any backlash it may cause now. I have a feeling the Hokage is prepared as well if he's releasing it, sighed Naruto. This was gonna be a long day. Okay, if you say so. The final member of Team 7 is Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze. It took most of the others to remember why that name was famous, but when it clicked their jaws dropped. Naruto was the son of their Yondaime Hokage? Due to the shock, Kiba accidentally said what everyone else was thinking. Holy shit, Naruto is the son of the Kiroi Senko? Yellow Flash. The only ones not shocked at this discovery were Yakumo and Ino. When Naruto had told them he would share his secrets, he damn well meant it. He had told them everything. The fox, his heritage, his sensei, why he met his sensei, all of it. Irika coughed as a way to try and regain some semblance of order in the class. Team 7, your Jounin sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. At this, Naruto was surprised. Why wasn't Kakashi teaching the Uchiha kid? He was the only one in the village who could possibly train the kid on how to use his Sharingan. Team 8 will be Shikamaru Nara, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inazaka. Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. There was no whoop or anything. After that bombshell, the kids had been stunned to silence. Taking advantage of the unusual drop in volume in the class, Irika continued. Team 10 under Asuma Sarutobi will consist of Shino Aburame, Choji Akimichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. Grabbing his clipboard and some papers, Irika said his final words to his now ex-students. I'm proud of you guys. Remember, my door is always open to any of you. It was an honor teaching you kids. Be safe out there. With that, Irika bowed, and the kids bowed to him as a sign of respect to the man. And with that, Irika left the room. Before the kids could begin pestering Naruto with questions, Hayate and Gunma showed up to grab their teams. Not seconds later, Asuma and Kurenai showed up as well to take their teams. As soon as the room was cleared, Yakumo and Ino looked at Naruto with concerned eyes. You sure you're gonna be able to handle it, Naruto? You remember what you told us might happen if the village ever found out, right? Questioned an oddly kind Ino. Yakumo was a girl of few words and simply wrapped her hands around his arm and laid her head on his shoulder. Had this been another time, Naruto's fellow blonde would have made a scene, but now was not the time. Naruto needed all the support he could get. With that in mind, she mirrored Yakumo. Sighing yet again, yeah, I'll be fine. As long as I don't start getting gray hairs from all this sighing I'm doing today, haha. Taking his arms out of the grasp of the girls and wrapping an arm around each of the girls' waists, he continued with a grin. Besides, I got two beautiful and strong kunoichi by my side, right? Of course, spoke a blushing yet still pumped Yamanaka. You bet, Naru, murmured the very comfortable genjutsu user. Though I wonder where our sensei is, she continued. Oh right, almost forgot about that. Hey Inu, you can come out now. Naruto spoke, surprising the girls. Then they sensed it too. The chakra sitting at Irika's desk. Turning, they saw a silver-haired man wearing the standard Jounin uniform with his Hitai-8 covering his left eye, with his feet on the desk reading a certain little orange book. They both face-palmed at that. How the hell had they missed the guy? Guess they had been too worried about Naruto to notice. They made a note to not let that happen again. Had this been anywhere else, they very well could have been dead and Naruto wouldn't always be there to save them. I was originally going to give you 3 a teamwork test, but seeing your current position, I believe that may be a moot point, drawled the man. So you're the famous Kakashi Hatake, huh? Our village's own Sharingan no Kakashi. Yakumo calmly spoke. Naruto had drilled it into them that knowing your comrades was just as important, if not more so, than knowing your enemy. One of the Leaf's best Jounin and son of Tsukumo Hatake, the Konoha no Shiro Kiba, White Fang of Konoha. We got a pretty good sensei, didn't we, Rudokuin? Spoke a grinning Ino. Kakashi was heavily surprised by the knowledge these two had on him. Most Chunin didn't even know who his father was and what he had done. Guess he was going to have to take this even more serious than what he had originally planned. Nicely done, girls, but you're forgetting one last little tidbit, spoke a grinning Naruto. Turning to Kakashi, he began. He was also the student of my father in the second incarnation of Team 7, and only a few years later was a well-known Umbu captain, and was in the running for taking the position of head of the Umbu Black Ops. Naruto walked down to meet Kakashi and stuck his hand out. He was also one of the few people who ever gave a shit about me. How've you been, Inu and I? Finished the now smiling Genin. Kakashi just chuckled and shook his head. He really was in for it with this team. Good to see you again too, Naruto and I. Okay, so now that we are an official team, we need to get some things out of the way first. You three know each other better than anyone else in this whole village, but as your sensei, I need to know you three just as well so we can actually work together efficiently. At this, the three genin nodded. He wasn't wrong. Just because they could work flawlessly together didn't mean anything if their Jounin leader knew next to nothing about them and their styles. He had much more experience and was far stronger than them. Well, except Naruto. Even still, he did have an edge over even Naruto. He had been raised and fought in the last great ninja war and had seen and done things they may never have to. So to start it off, let's share our likes, dislikes, hobbies, your dream for the future, as well as general strength level, as well as what you think your specialty is. Pointing at the sole person with a normal hair color on the team, he said, "Why don't you go first, shy one?" At that comment, both Naruto and Ino chuckled. "Yakumo? Shy?" With a noticeable tick mark, she began. "First off, I'm not shy, you damn scarecrow. I just prefer not to say much, got it? Anyways, my likes are Narukuin, Ino, and T. My dislikes, when Ino tries to steal my Narukuin from me, people who intrude on me when I'm trying to get some peace and quiet, arrogant jerks, and people who use others. My hobbies include painting, observing others, meditating, and sightseeing. My dream for the future is to have a happy family with Narukuin. My general strength level? Well, Narukuin says I'm around low Jounin level without my Jinjutsu. And my specialty is of course my Jinjutsu, though I'm fairly decent at Iryo Jutsu as well as stealth. An assassin who can make her Jinutsus come to life? If there was ever more of a perfect assassin, she'd be it. Alright, Blondie, you're up next. At this, both Naruto and Ino looked at each other questioningly. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Oops. A female Blondie, you go next, I guess. Deadpanning, Ino started. Dumbass. My likes are Rutokuin, Yakumo, my family, and vegetable stew. My dislikes are people who purposely destroy nature. Yakumo when she tries to butt in on my Ruto time, assholes and fangirls. Of course, my hobbies are tending to my family garden, spending time with Ruto, and studying the mind arts. My dream for the future is to be a good clan head and have a bunch of little blonde children with Rutokuin. My strength level? Well, I'm not as good as Yakumo yet, but Ruto says I'm around high Chunin level. My specialty is of course my clan's jutsu, meaning I'm great for recon and interrogation. I'm also pretty good with poisons and the like. I'm actually pretty good at Iryo Jutsu too, boasted the proud Yamanaka. Can't say I blame the girl. A year ago she was a fangirl herself, and to have reached her skill level in that time gives her right to be proud. But still, she's pretty much strictly a support member and sadly at this time our weakest link when compared to her teammates. However, Naruto is probably working on getting her up to snuff, so no worries yet. Well, now on to our last member. Your turn, short stack. The Jounin said with a teasing eye smile. How the hell could an eye smile be teasing? The teen grew a tick mark. I grew, damn it. And he was right. When he was a kid, he had been rather malnourished and so was pretty short for his age. But now, Naruto stood at a good 5 foot 5 inches, which was a good solid height for his age. With a huff, Naruto spoke. My likes are Yakumo-chan, Ino-chan, my old sensei Vincent, ramen, and the color orange. My dislikes are arrogant assholes, child abusers, a certain Uchiha, and people who prejudge others. At the remark about a certain Uchiha, Kakashi grew curious. Uchiha? There are only 2 left in the world, and Itachi never did anything to hurt the kid. In fact, Naruto loved Itachi. And as far as I know, Sasuke and Naruto could care less about the other. Who could it be? My hobbies include training, reading, researching, working on my own seals, and fighting people who give me a challenge. My strength level? Without the help of my tenant, I'd say about Jounin or Umbu level. I haven't really had a reason to use Kyuubi's chakra, but I can control up to 3 tails perfectly. At the 4th tail, I can somewhat control it, but my bloodlust becomes hard for me to fight back. 5. Yeah, let's hope none of you are around if I ever have to use 5 tails. My specialties are Fuinjutsu, Ninjutsu, and Kenjutsu. I'm decent at all other ninja arts. Naruto finished like he was talking about the weather. Oh yeah, I forgot that because of Kyuubi I'm an empath. It makes me a sensor of sorts. Holy shit, he's that strong at 14? And that's without the Kyuubi? This kid can probably give Jiraiya a run for his money. I might as well hand the team over to him. Guess Hokage-sama was right. I'm gonna have to get stronger if I want to keep up with these kids. Clapping his hands together and doing an eye smile, the Scarecrow said, "Well, I guess it's my turn. My likes? My dislikes? Good question. My hobbies are rated hee. My strength? Well, you guys seem to know that pretty well. My specialty is ninjutsu and assassination jutsu at that. Though I know my fair share of destructive jutsu as well." He looked at his team, expecting them to be disappointed at what he had shared, but instead he found Naruto was eating ramen, and Ino and Yakumo were talking about clothes. Instantly, Kakashi was in the corner of the rooftop, crouched over with a mini rain cloud over him. "You guys are so mean." Seeing that they weren't going to care anytime soon, he returned to normal, and with another eye smile, Kakashi began speaking again. "Well, I had originally planned on testing you guys, but again, that's a moot point. Instead, you have the day off, and come tomorrow we will begin training. Our schedule will be Monday, Tuesday, intensive training. Wednesday through Friday will be group exercises as well as missions. And Saturday and Sunday will be time to relax. Meet at Training Ground 7 tomorrow morning at 6. Johnny." And with that, Kakashi shunshined away. "So, Ruto, tomorrow we start?" asked Ino. "Yup, now that the council has no say in what we do, and now that we have a Jounin sensei to back us, the real training begins tomorrow," Naruto replied. Yakumo and Ino both sighed at this. Looks like it was back to boot camp, Naruto style. It had been a month since Team 7 had been initiated as an official team of Konoha, and since then not much had changed with the village. Even the members of Team 7 hadn't changed all that much. Naruto still wore the same clothes he had been wearing since the academy, except now he usually wore his ragged cloak on top of that and left it unzipped, as well as he now carried a katana at his left hip. The hilt was deep crimson red, and it had a black tassel that dangled from the pommel. Kakashi was still a pervert and lazy, but his fellow joinin could feel a change in his aura. It still exuded that same tone of laziness, but underneath that was a newfound well of power. Kakashi was strong. Everyone knew that, but it seemed like he had gained a drive to grow even stronger once more. Yakumo had done the most drastic change and had completely changed up her outfit. She now wore tight black shinobi pants taped at the ankle and black shinobi sandals. She wore a black tank top underneath a mesh top, and over that she wore a deep purple sweater whose sleeves went past her hands. Hidden in the sleeves were seals Naruto had drawn that held senbon, kunai, shuriken, and her paintbrushes. Those same weapons were covered in various poisons that Ino had actually made especially for her. Some of them kept her victims awake longer, knocked them out, paralyzed them, or straight up killed them on the spot. She had taken to covering her mouth with her sleeves, yes, just like a certain Arankar from Bleach, when talking. Ino had stayed pretty much the same, except she now carried 2 scrolls stacked on top of each other at the small of her back. One scroll contained various types of poisons meant for enemies. The one underneath that one carried assorted medical supplies should anybody need her assistance. At first the training had started off rather bumpy as the 3 genin were trying to get comfortable with Kakashi and vice versa. Once that bump had been passed, training went off without a hitch. Not even the Hokage knew exactly how strong the team was, as all Kakashi was willing to share with him was that the team works seamlessly together as a unit, and each of us has grown in some way. This of course bothered the man to no end, as one of the reasons he had wanted Kakashi to be their sensei was to have an insider of sorts. He highly doubted that they were thinking of anything close to betraying the village, but still he wasn't comfortable not knowing how strong his soldiers were. At current time we find our Hokage along with the Ninja Council dealing with said team. So as I understand, Jounin Hatake, you wish for permission to leave the village for 2 months on a training trip. What exactly would warrant this? The Ninja Council members were just as curious. There had never been a request such as this from a genin team, let alone such a new genin team. Chunins and Jounins? Sure, but fresh out of the academy genin? Unheard of. If I may, Hokage-sama? Interjected the team's powerhouse. It still hurt the man deeply to hear a teen he had once bottle-fed and cared for refer to him in such a way, but he hid it well. He had no one to blame for it but himself. You may genin, he motioned. Well sir, the reason we feel it would benefit us is was as far as Naruto got before he was interrupted by the chamber doors being slammed open by the members of the civilian council. All those present narrowed their eyes at this. What right did they have to interrupt this? What is the meaning of this Hokage? Holding a meeting without us? Shouted one indescript member of the council. Shouts of agreement echoed throughout the small gathering of civilians. Sarutobi's old teammates and rival for the hat made their way to the forefront of the crowd as well. Indeed, Hiruzen, what are you doing performing such things behind our BA-? Enough! Shouted Hiruzen, flaring his chakra as well as his ki, killing intent. Forcing many to their knees, coming to a standing position, he continued. I have watched you all run my sensei's village to the ground, all while disrespecting me and my position, and I've had enough of it. You have all forgotten that this is no democracy. This is a shinobi village and you are all civilians. Meaning you have absolutely no say in how I command my soldiers. Pointing at Koharu, Hamura, and Danzo, he continued his rant. And you three, you seem to have forgotten your place as well. You do not tell me what to do. You are my advisors, meaning you advise me and nothing more. I have final say when it comes to all matters of this village, you do not. Letting loose a vast amount of chakra, causing even some of the clan heads to sweat, he spoke. Do I make myself clear, civilians? Strained murmurs of yes, Hokage-sama, rang through the crowd. Sarutobi took his seat once more and dispersed his chakra, letting the civilians stand once more. Good. I hope I don't have to do this again. Boo. Escort these people out. It was with grumbles that the room was finally cleared of the civilians. Motioning with his hands like nothing had happened, he intoned, You were saying Genin Namikaze? Guess I had an impact on the old man that night. Glad you're coming back, thought a smirking Naruto. Coughing, he spoke with a straight face. Yes, well, as it stands, my team and myself have need of more space to practice both our own individual techniques as well group ones that would cause quite a bit of collateral damage to the village and any training ground in the village. And what of the Forest of Death? Or even the training fields behind the Hokage monument? Would they not meet your needs? Inquired the ever-stoic Hyuga head. Or even the Umbu training grounds? Those are made to handle such things, continued the feral Tsum Inazaka. If I may be blunt, council and Hokage? Questioned Naruto. At their approval, he bluntly stated. Normally yes, but the use of my furry tenant is included in some of these as well as Yakumo's own bloodline. We also cannot get real-world experience here in the village, and being honest, we knew you would never permit our group to even attempt higher-ranking missions, so we figured that if we went out to train we would encounter people to test us. Kids damn smart, was the collective thought of among the ninja council. Hokage-sama, if I may? Spoke a surprisingly alert Nara Shikaku. After getting the okay to canteen from his commander, he rose from his seat and with a sigh began to speak. I think this may prove to be quite the boon for us as a village in quite a few ways. Not only will we have possibly one of our strongest jounins accompany possibly our strongest genin squad outside, they could, for the lack of a better term, serve as advertisements to both our allies as well as our enemies. Shikaku saw that he had piqued the interest of all those present. He continued with another sigh. By sending out these four, they would obviously encounter both our allies as well as enemies. Of course, our enemies may see this as an opportunity to pick one of our teams off, but when they are deftly handled by a mere genin squad, well, you can imagine the ensuing rumors. Of course, we all know that this particular team is of course far from average, but those that would serve as messengers of this news don't have to. His speech was met with the whole room smirking at the deviousness of it all. Hey, you can't blame them. These are people trained to use any tactic to win the battle, or in this case stop a battle from even happening. It was dirty, underhanded, and secretive, or in other words, a perfect plan for a village of trained assassins. Only minutes later, Team 7 was walking out of the Hokage Tower with a scroll signed by every member of the Ninja Council, as well as the Hokage himself, allowing them almost Sanin travel rights. It was weeks later we find Team 7 sitting around a campfire after having returned from gaining the bounty of yet another overly cocky missing nin. This had been taken care of by Ino personally. He had said something about her being a bimbo and the rest of the team knew to let her handle it. It was only by sheer luck that they had been able to save the head from being melted by a corrosive acid the Yamanaka had injected into the man, via a rather uncomfortable place that things should not be injected into. Within the span of a few weeks, the team had managed to grow even more as a team thanks to them not having to worry about endangering any innocents. The only innocents that suffered were the poor innocent trees they slaughtered on a regular basis. Of course, they had been able to work on individual skills some, but the whole purpose of this trip was to get even more comfortable with each other and be able to more easily be able to not only coordinate their individual attacks but also their team attacks. Those same team attacks ranged from small jutsu use and taijutsu combinations to joint jutsu combinations on a massive scale. As individuals, they were strong and fearsome, especially Naruto and Kakashi, but as a team, they were nay undefeatable. They had finally found out where Naruto stood without the help of his tenant, and he and Kakashi were currently tied for wins and losses in their spars. Said spars looked more like battles to the death that had actually given Ino quite a bit of valuable experience in healing various burns, cuts, gashes, broken bones, and several other otherwise life-threatening wounds. Naruto, of course, needed no help in that department. It was a topic that had actually piqued Naruto's interest. Whenever he had used even the smallest amounts of Kyuubi's chakra in the past, he always felt the telltale signs of said chakra beast's bloodlust and anger, but when he was healed, he felt none of that. With that in mind, he had elected to use today's solo training time to get some questions he had answered. Entering a meditative state, he soon found himself in the sewer that was his mind. It had become quite clean in recent years due to his new outlook in life, and all but no matter how good life was going for him, it remained a sewer still. The waters had lowered until they merely looked like a puddle. The walls looked much cleaner, and the pipes that represented his chakra pathways shined a bright bronze. The young Uzumaki followed the pipes and the huge source of power to the open chamber where the strongest of the bijou resided. Of course, being a massive constructive chakra didn't take away from the fact that the Kyuubi was still a kitsune, which is why our hero currently finds the snoozing form of the fox. Naruto now had a dilemma on his hands. He had to find a way to wake up the massive fox without ticking it off. If he pissed it off, then he would get zero answers and be booted from his own damn mind. For as old as the fox was, it still acted like a teenager. Either that or the fox was affected by the person it was being contained in. Naruto paced back and forth with his hands folded behind him, trying to think of a good way to pleasantly wake up the sleeping furball without getting my ass chewed out. After 5 minutes of pacing, Naruto snapped his fingers. We're talking about a giant fox here. What better way to wake up a giant fox than with a giant rabbit? Using the fact that this was his mind to his advantage, the blonde imagined a fluffy white bunny, except on a much larger scale. And with a poof, said image took physical, mental, it took form. The thing was almost as big as him. He sent it into the cage, and the next thing he knew was he had giant bunny blood splattering all over him. Gross. Looking up, he saw the bijou grinning at him as it cleaned the blood from its fur. Well, well, my host, that was a good little treat. Lowering itself onto its haunches and resting its head on its front paws, it looked at its jailer with a bored look. Now I assume you woke me for some reason or other. I may be in a decent mood, but I would much like to get back to my nap, so if you would please hurry. Naruto nodded. Right, well, I just got a couple of questions you may have the answers to. Noticing the fox looked just the slightest bit more interested, he continued. Well, I know that because I have you stuck in me. My empath sense has become something akin to radar. I was just wondering if that would be passed down along with the Uzumaki vitality and all that. Well, yes, it would be possible. It would require some work on both our parts. You are correct. I am the reason the sense was heightened to unseen levels, and it's that very reason that should you mate with a female, normally the offspring would not be born with the power. I would have to pump some of my own yoki into your sperm, infusing them with said yoki to make it possible. The blonde teen nodded at that. It made sense. Had he not had the Kyuubi, he wouldn't have the power in the first place. The only thing is that the child will not have it anywhere close to your level. Because you have my chakra constantly being siphoned into your body, the sense has become dependent on it. It's using my yoki as a source of energy. Since the child will not have the yoki constantly flowing through its pathways, the sense will not have enough energy to work to its full potential. Lectured the kitsune. Yeah, that does make sense. Alright, thanks. My other question is about my healing factor. I know we Uzumaki are extremely durable, and I've become even more so thanks to you, but whenever my healing factor kicks in, I know it's not your yoki that's doing it. Why is my healing factor so advanced? The fox paused to stretch before it continued. Well, your healing prowess is thanks to a lot of different factors. Part of it is your Uzumaki blood. Another part is having me. Another part is this damn seal here. And the last part is your father's blood. At this, Naruto was surprised. His father's blood? The guy was an orphan and had never been able to find out who his parents were. What was in his blood to be able to contribute to his ungodly healing factor? And how the hell did the fox know who they were? Don't worry, I'll get to that, but first my part in it. You see, the seal you have on you may be vastly different from that of your mother and your ancestor Mito, but they also served the same basic principle, binding me to them damn near down to the soul. Because of this, I have absorbed some qualities from them and vice versa. Your seal is much different in that you are allowed access to much more of my power, but in exchange we are quite literally bonded at the soul. This has allowed for some of my own qualities to seep into you. So my own greatness combined with the vitality of two very powerful Uzumaki women, and you have become close to being immortal. Normally, the only way that you would possibly be able to die would be via decapitation or someone ripping out your beating heart. Anything short of that and you'll be coming back. You'd also be victim to the ravages of time. Eventually. Probably not until you hit your hundreds or so, but you'd still fall victim to time. It looked like the QB had finally finished, but with a pointed look Naruto shut his mouth. Now, one of the most interesting things that contributes to your healing is your father's blood. How much of the inner workings do you know about your father's famed Hiraishin? Although he hadn't been able to fully master the technique yet, he had of course studied the notes on it. The thing was a Fuinjutsu masterpiece almost on par with the one on his stomach. Well, I know that the basic principle of it is that it bends the fabric of space and time around two certain points, the seal marker and the user. Using chakra, the user is able to make a tunnel of sorts between the 2 points, making travel in between the points instantaneous. It's one of a small handful of known Jikuken, time-space jutsu. Yes, and the other Jikuken techniques are not nearly as impressive. Do you realize what you have just said? Your father is bending the very fabric of the universe to his whim with naught but his chakra. If he had lived to be as old as the monkey, I have no doubt he would have been able to use the technique without the marker. But back on topic. What your father is doing is something not even most of us Bijou are able to do. I myself only have a very rudimentary ability to do something similar, and I'm thousands of years old. Spoke the now clearly awake Kitsune. It may have at one point been angry at the man, but even it had to respect someone who was able to redirect a Bijudama, tailed beast ball, using a highly advanced Jikuken jutsu. As he finally came to realize what the technique truly was, Naruto's jaw dropped. His father was literally playing Kami. The seals on the marker were honestly not all that complex. He had been able to understand a chunk of them after a couple of months and all of them after 3 years. What the hell else was his father doing that could possibly make such a thing possible? It's not what your father was doing, but more like what his chakra was doing. At hearing the booming voice, the teen looked questioningly at the massive Kitsu. What does his chakra have to do with this? Every living thing on this planet has an affinity. Everything from Uningen down to the smallest insect has an affinity to one or more of the elements. Some fall into the main 5 of fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning. Others, however, fall into sub-elements such as ice, magma, metal, and even light and dark themselves. Your father was from a very unique clan thought to have died out during the clan wars. That clan was responsible for the handful of known Jikuken techniques. The Namikaze clan was a clan feared by many for their jutsu and their affinity to Jikuken. Others looked at them as demons, as they believed only the gods should be able to mess with time and space. Eventually the clan grew too full of themselves and attempted to time travel and plane jump. They failed, and the backlash caused by that failure cost them more than half of their numbers. The other clans heard of their weakened state and pounced. Soon the clan had been erased from the annals of history for fear that others would attempt to recreate their techniques. Only someone the age of your Shodame would have any kind of knowledge on that clan. Naruto sat there awestruck. He was not from just one clan that had been wiped out due to fear of their strength, but 2. But what made them so special? I mean, what gave them their affinity to Jikuken? I myself do not know of their origins, as they had been around when the Rakuto Sannin was alive. However, I do know that their chakra had special properties. Much like Uzumaki chakra grants the user vitality and endurance, Namikaze gifts them with dense and powerful chakra. Their chakra was so thick and strong they could bend the universe as they pleased. It's that very chakra that allowed your father to invent the technique that gave him his name, and it's that very chakra that now runs through your veins. But how does that affect my healing? The Namikaze clan were like the Uzumaki in that, because of the properties of their chakra and blood, they were harder to kill than the average human. With the Namikaze, their cells reproduced so rapidly, and for so long that they had become near invulnerable to the destruction of time. Your mother looked to be in her 20s well into her 30s, and your father was much the same. You'll probably look 20 well into your 60s. You, my vessel, are the closest to being immortal any ninjen has ever gotten. Naruto sat on his ass too shocked to speak. He prided himself on being able to control his emotions and not look, well, like a fool, but this was just one of those moments. How could he not be shocked? At the age of 14, he was closer than anybody in the elemental nations to damn well being a kami. Everything about him was near perfection. He was bred to be great. Naruto sat there gaping like a fish. The kitsune's sweat dropped. Maybe it had said too much in one sitting. Coughing into its pause, it continued. Yes, well, that may well be a very intelligent response in the making. You would do well to remember who is after you and who else would come for you if they knew what you do. You may have the potential to even equal me, but without the training to use any of it properly, that's all it will be, potential. As it stands, you are indeed strong, but nowhere near the level of those who would see you dead or under a microscope. Still too shocked by all of it, Naruto merely nodded with his mouth still wide open. The sweat drop, the kitsune had returned much larger this time. I'll leave you to cope then. And with that, Naruto was ejected from his mind. A week later, we find our protagonist on his own meditating. After learning about everything from his tenant, he had began to push his own training to even greater heights. To do so, he had apologized to Ino and Yakumo for having to give them to Kakashi to continue their training, but they had understood. It actually gave them even more incentive to grow stronger. If they planned to help their blonde crush with the enemies and situations he would find himself in, then they would need to be strong as they could be. Kakashi had also understood and had even vowed that he would be there too. No matter what, they were his students and he would help them any way he could. At the current moment, the teen was meditating to get a feel for the different chakras coursing through his body. Of course, since he had been born with them and they had thusly grown into him, the different chakras had blended into one perfect, balanced source. He could still, however, feel the different qualities his chakra had. It was like Namikaze, Uzumaki, and Kyubi's were rivers that all flowed into the lake that was his chakra. To begin to truly use the powers of each, he had to be able to differentiate between them all. Using Namikaze chakra to do an Uzumaki technique may end less than pleasantly for him. It struck him as odd that chakra had a feel to it, an emotion of sorts. Maybe he was the only one able to sense it due to his empath powers, but nonetheless it was there. Maybe it had something to do with the chakra itself? Maybe it was like blood in that it carried parts of its originator, his ancestor. I'm getting off track here. Okay, so let me see. Naruto thought as he searched through his chakra pool. Anger, malevolence, power, and superiority? That's definitely the fuzzball's yoki. Life, vitality, and energy? That's my Uzumaki chakra. Now was as far as his thought process went before he felt it. Holy fuck. This feeling. Strength, dominance, force. What is this? Is this how Namikaze chakra feels? It's fuck. Chach! Screamed the blonde as he squeezed his eyes and held his head. Might controls everything. Without it, you can't protect anything, not even yourself. Echoed a rumbling voice in his head. Who the fuck are you? Get out of my head! Screamed the blonde in agonizing pain. Who are you? There is room only for one in this kit's mind, and I am it. Leave here, no dash. Foolish kitsune. You hold no power over me. Be silent. Inside the cage, we see the great Kyubi ramming the gates of its cage in an effort to help its vessel. With a mighty roar, the kitsune unleashes 5 tails of its power, letting it flow into every crack and crevice of its prison. KIT was the last thing heard from the mightiest of the bijou. Who are you and what do you want? Yelled the panicking teen. He could no longer hear, let alone feel the Kyubi's presence. Calm yourself, child. I am not going to harm you or that beast. As for who I am your ancestor. I am Yamato Namikaze. Now where could those flowers be? They shouldn't be this hard to find here, spoke a beautiful teen. She had a porcelain face complemented by the dark hair that framed her face. She looked to be about 16 and had the curves to prove it, though said curves were somewhat hidden by the pink kimono she wore. She carried a small wicker basket on her right arm as she leisurely strolled through the forest. Now I could have sworn I saw some of the flowers I need when we walked through this path. Where could dash? She stopped her train of thought abruptly as she saw the destruction of the forest. Trees were either burned, sliced clean, or some combination of the two. The ground was no better as it was cratered as if it hit by a small meteor shower. Venturing further into the destruction, she saw who she thought to be the culprit in a meditative pose. It was a teen around her age with wild blonde hair that fell around his head in gentle spikes. The teen was currently shirtless, showing her what kind of training he did, and boy was she blushing. On his lap sat a beautifully crafted okatana with a crimson red hilt and a length of black cloth hanging from the pommel. "You know it's kinda rude to stare at someone shirtless, miss," spoke the teen. She eeped before she chuckled in attempt to regain some composure. "Yes, well, I was merely, admiring your sword." And immediately her mind shot to the gutter. If he's that toned up there, I wonder if, "Oh bad Haku? I mean, well, what happened here?" she nervously asked. Chuckling, the blonde opened his eyes to reveal the most beautiful sapphire blue eyes she had ever seen. He rose from his position on the floor to show that he was a couple inches taller than her. He grabbed his ragged black cloak from a hanging tree branch and threw it on, leaving it unzipped. He walked up to her carrying his blade in his left hand lazily. Each step he took closer to her, her blush grew darker. An arm's distance away, he lifted his hand to offer a handshake. "My name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," spoke the blonde Adonis with his foxy grin plastered on his face. Slipping her hand in his, she nervously chuckled and said, Haku Momoichi. "So what are you doing out in this part of the forests of Hai no Kuni?" inquired our blonde protagonist from his sitting position. He of course had an inkling of what she was doing here, but hey, he could be wrong. "Oh." The dark-haired teen frantically shot to her feet and began to gather her things. "I'm actually here looking for a specific type of herb." "What kind of herb?" "I might be able to help," volunteered our hero. Before anything more could be said, both individuals could feel a spike of churka, which meant a battle. Haku narrowed her eyes as she could see the hints that the Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist, had been used, and she knew only one person in this area who used that technique in battle. Naruto had of course noticed much before Haku had, but kept it from showing on his face. He knew the name Momoichi and the person causing the churka spike. One Zabuza Momoichi, the demon of the bloody mist and former member of the Kirin no Shino Bigatana Shishinin Shu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. He knew Zabuza was a powerful enemy, and a couple months ago Kakashi would have been able to go toe-to-toe with the guy with some difficulty. But that was not the Kakashi the so-called demon was fighting. This Kakashi was the Jounin who was trained by the Kiroi Senku of Kanaha, the same man who knew over 1,000 jutsu and had created 2 jutsu unique to him. Zabuza frankly stood no chance. "I apologize, Naruto-kun, but I must be going now." And with that, the ice user was gone. She forgot her basket. "Guess I should return it to her." Whistling a jaunty tune of some sort, Naruto leisurely made his way to where he knew the fight was taking place. The sounds of steel clashing against steel echoed through what was once a thick forest, now being a man-made clearing. "Come on, Zabuza. Where is that famous demon of the mist at?" spoke a smirking Kakashi. "Geez, I really gotta stop letting those 3 rub off on me. I was never this battle happy, but I do admit it is pretty fun." The shirtless swordsman merely grunted in response. "I know that he was feared for a reason, but this is ridiculous. He's fighting back my attacks using only kunai." Yakumo and Ino sat atop a tree branch not too far away enjoying the show. Individually, Zabuza would be a problem, but together Yakumo and Ino were confident enough to be able to handle him. Besides, Kakashi was handling things well enough, and they could feel Naruto making his way over. "Hey Ino, you want her or should I?" spoke a smirking Yakumo. "Oh, well, I got the last one, so you can go ahead," spoke a grinning blonde. Geez, Naruto had really done a number on them. Haku came blazing into the clearing intent on helping her master. Preparing some sunbon, she was about to throw them to at least throw Kakashi off. Zabu dash was all she could get out before she received a sandal to her stomach. She was thrown clear into a tree with enough force to splinter it. Giggling from behind her sleeve, the genjutsu user mocked, "Nah, My sensei is enjoying the fight and a 2-on-1 fight is hardly fair, so just sit there and watch, okay? She turned to leave the girl but would have been skewered by Senbon had she not vanished. Haku's eyes widened. Where did she… You know, I get that we're ninja and all, but really, when my back is turned. Haku would have moved if she didn't feel the cold steel of a sharpened kunai at her throat. The dark-haired ice user witnessed Zabuza get thrown clear across the forest via Kakashi's use of a Doton Jutsu from her down position. With a steely look in her, she prepared herself for what she was going to do. I must help Zabuza-sama at any cost. She formed the one-handed seals for her signature jutsu. As she formed the last of the seals, she threw her head back against Yakumo's abdomen, allowing her enough room to escape. With a burst of chakra, she called out, Hijitsu, Makio Hyosho, secret art, demonic ice mirrors. A dome of said mirrors formed around the brunette teen, encasing her in the icy trap. I apologize for having to use this technique on you, but I must help my master, said the solemn Haku. She hated to use this technique because it meant she was going for the killing blow and she would rather not have to kill. Killing never sat well with her. As she prepared to end the fight as quick as possible, she expected to see some fear in the girl, but all she saw was her form shaking. She must be crying cause she doesn't want to die. I am sorry, but I must help Zabuza-sama. With that last thought, Haku launched the senbon and watched as the young girl was turned into a pincushion. Haku looked down in shame. You think you killed me? Haku snapped up to see the reflections of herself begin to morph into the form of the brunette. What? How? Well, you see, you've made your own grave with this technique. You showed your full hand to finish a battle you thought would be easy without knowing the cards your enemy held. Haku tried to escape the mirror but found she was stuck inside the mirror itself. She's turned my own technique on me? How? Allow me to introduce myself. Haku heard from behind her. Turning, she found the girl she thought she had killed standing in a field of freshly fallen snow. My name is Yakumo Karama. And it was at that moment Haku began sweating. She may not have been from Konoha, but the Karama family was known throughout the nations for being able to make their genjutsu become reality. Now, I would rather not have to do this, but you've left me no choice. Goodbye, Miss Ice User. Haku began to panic as she saw things rising from the snow. They looked like frozen corpses that had been released from hell itself. She closed her eyes and prepared for the inevitable. I'm sorry, Zabuza-sama, I have failed you. She was ready to accept her fate before she heard the sound of something smacking against flesh and an even louder yelp of pain. Opening her eyes, she saw the blonde she had met in the forest and the brunette who was going to murder her with her own technique on the floor, holding her rear in pain. All she could do was sweat drop at the ridiculousness of the situation. She had been ready to die, but she had been saved, because the girl who was going to kill her had been spanked. Now, Yakumo, normally I would congratulate you, but considering I would much like to keep our lovely Yukiana, Snow Woman, here alive and unharmed, well, you see what happened. After getting her blush under control, she asked, Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Inquired the very curious ice user. Hey, wait a minute. Naruto-kun? Where do you think dash was all Yakumo could get out before she was smacked on her still tender rear. Naruto-kun, what was that for? Pouted the genjutsu user. Play nice, Yakumo, and I'll tell you later, admonished the blonde. Turning to Haku, he answered, here to save you, of course. Now let's see what we can do about your father-in-law. Haku's eyes widened at being reminded about Zabuza and his current position. Zabu! Dash was all she got put before she was flicked on the nose. Scrunching up her face at the flick, she looked at Naruto, pouting. Why is no one letting me finish my sentences today? 'Cause we can, grinned the cheeky blonde. Now let's get out of here. And with a snap of the finger, the frozen wasteland was gone to be replaced by Zabuza rocketing across the field and Kakashi hot on his tail Raikiri, lightning edge in hand. Naruto seemingly phased out of existence only to appear before Kakashi, catching his wrist before he could deliver the finishing blow. Kakashi merely looked up, giving his student a questioning gaze. Potential allies, was all the Jinchuriki said, and Kakashi just nodded his head. It made sense. Zabuza and his apprentice would be a good addition to the village. Zabuza looked up at the kid, who had saved him oddly. Who the hell was he and why did he seem familiar? I swear I've seen that blade before. And the hair? Who is this kid? Zabuza would have continued his thoughts had Haku not rushed over to him. He noticed the girl seemed rather distraught over something. "Hey, why you looking all depressed, Haku?" grunted the swordsman. Even on his last legs, he was still a hard ass, it seemed. Sniffling, she explained, "I was worried I would lose you. I thought I had failed dash, only to be interrupted by Zabuza amusing her hair. Hey, you did good. It's my fault we ended up in this situation. I thought they were here for the bounty on my head or something like that." At hearing that, Kakashi and his team attempted to look as innocent as possible. "Well, thanks to Naruto-kun dash." "Hey, whoa there, Kun?" teased Zabuza. Haku merely gained a tick mark. "Why isn't no one letting me finish my sentences?" At that, everyone there laughed at the poor girl's expense. After everyone had managed to regain their breath, Naruto walked up to the pair. "Well, I actually have a question for you too. How would you like to stop having to constantly look behind your backs?" questioned the blonde Uzumaki. Zabuza wearily looked at the teen. "Hold on, what are you saying?" "Well, I have some pull with the Hokage, and I'm sure if I vouched for you too, you would have no problem becoming a part of Konoha's forces. My family name would also help with the villagers and all as well," Naruto casually stated. He wasn't wrong about any of it. Zabuza merely grunted before he slowly rose to a standing position using his giant blade as a crutch. "That reminds me. You and that blade you have there look really familiar to me. What's your name, kid?" The QB container stuck his hand out. "Name's Naruto?" Naruto used a dash with a steely glint in his eyes. He grabbed Zabuza and Haku in a show of speed and brought them to where his teammates were. His reason for this? A pack of those nasty creatures he had seen years ago when he first started training. This time, though, they looked to be out for blood. "What the fuck are those?" asked his fellow blonde, a sentiment shared by all present. "I don't know, but I need you all to stay here. None of you are in good enough shape to even harm these things." With a blink, Naruto was only inches from the thing's blade drawn. However, to his surprise, his blade was blocked way too easily for his comfort. In a matter of a second, he was surrounded and about to become pulp, with all the creatures using their spiked limbs as deadly blunt weapons. With a backflip, he was on top of the shoulders of one of them before they could get to him. Brandishing his blade once more, he attempted to rid it of its head. However, he was smashed in the side by another of the creatures, sending him flying into several trees with the clear sound of bone breaking as he impacted. The others were having a hard enough time following all of this as the battle was happening at speeds way beyond their level. Even Kakashi's Sharingan was having trouble keeping up. As soon as they saw and heard Naruto get hit and get sent clear into the trees, they panicked, Yakumo, Ino, and Haku especially. They were about ready to jump in and help in any way they could before they saw Naruto struggle to rise to his feet. Spitting out a wad of blood, he grunted, "And oh, they're not here for you. They're here for me. I can handle this." "But why are they here for me? They were never this strong, and if I got far enough away before, they would leave me be. Why are these ones so intent on killing me? They know who you are. They smell it on you," intoned the voice of his ancestor. Quickly bringing up his katana to block an incoming strike and ducking another, he tried to attack once more only to have to weave through several more spiked limbs. He quickly jumped away from the pack to give himself room to breathe. "Fuck, this is getting ridiculous. These creatures will not rest until you are dead. Why me? And why now? They've never been this bloodthirsty before." Again, Naruto found himself dodging and weaving his way through a mob of flying limbs intent on smashing his head in. Right now is not the time to explain, but I will say this. They sense the Namikaze's blood in you, and they will stop at nothing to see it gone from this world. Enough of making a fool of yourself. Dispose of these beasts. Yeah, I got it. Time to get serious." With a roar, Naruto unleashed some of his chakra, allowing it to coalesce around him. This was not a separation of his different sources, but his true chakra, and it blazed a royal shade of purple. His eyes narrowed and went from sapphire jewels of mirth to frozen chips of ice. This is what he had dubbed his battle mode. All traces of emotion were dead to him in this state of mind, and his only goals were to defeat whoever stood in his way at any cost and protect those close to him. His companions were all shocked at the amount of energy he was putting out. Kakashi noticed the change in his demeanor and posture as well as the feel of his chakra. Yakumo and Ino noticed as well. Normally, Naruto's chakra gave off the feel of warmth and safety, but now those feelings were buried underneath a well of dominance and authority. If they were being truthful, it was kind of hot. Haku and Zabuza had only known the blonde for a short time and were shocked beyond belief at what this teen was doing. To be that strong at his age was almost unheard of. Picking their jaws up off the floor, Haku was only barely able to catch the scabbard of Naruto's okatana. "You asked for my name, right, Zabuza?" Looking up, they saw Naruto staring at the oncoming pack of creatures, twirling his okatana by the tassel on its pommel. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. And this was my mother, Kushina Uzumaki's sword." All Zabuza could do was gape. He was the child of the Konoha no Kiroi Senko Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, the Konoha no Akashur, Red Death of Konoha. As soon as the creatures were in range, Naruto tossed the blade like a spear with enough force to pierce straight through the thick hide of one of the beasts. Within a flash, Naruto was once more holding his blade in the midst of the pack and was unleashing an innumerable amount of slashes all around him, but he knew it was far from over. The creatures had extremely thick hide and some minor healing factor. They were also extremely hard to put down. Hell, the one who had been pierced by his blade was still going strong. With that in mind, Naruto sent Futon Chakra, though the blade, and calmly spoke, "Futon, Shinken, Vacuum Sword." Naruto's allies' field of vision was cut short as a dome of pure wind-natured chakra entrapped the area occupied by the creatures and Naruto. "Wait, that looks more like your Hyuga clan's Hakushu Kaiten, Heavenly Spin," Zabuza grunted out. "No, it looks like that because Naruto has created so many slashes with Shinken in such a short amount of time they have created that dome," spoke a flabbergasted Kakashi. He knew Naruto was good, and he had the scars to prove that, but what had he been doing the past couple of days on his own to get this good? Again, Zabuza's jaw met the floor. He had seen some of the greatest sword wielders in his day. Hell, he was one of the best, but this was incredible. They were cut short as the dome finally collapsed, revealing 4 of the 8 creatures done for. There was no way they were getting back up with those kinds of wounds. Again, they were shocked when said creatures did just that. Naruto just scoffed. "You guys just don't know when to stop, huh? Fine, let's see how well you handle this." The only response he got was the watery-sounding roar/screech of the creatures as they charged at him, once more trying to end his life. Using some of his Namikaze chakra, he performed the signature move of his ancestor, Yamato, Judgment Cut. All the others could see were purplish spheres appearing around the pack, and then the beasts exploding due to the innumerable amount of slashes. To their and Naruto's own surprise, the creatures looked like they had been sneezed on and not just slashed a million times in the span of a second. They are immune to the ravages of time, which means any Jikuken technique is completely useless against them. Could have told me that earlier. But whatever, guess we're doing this my way then. Sliding his sword into the ground, he proceeded to go through a sequence of hand seals before calling out, "Keta, Hosenka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Phoenix Sage Fire," launching volley of small fireballs towards the charging group of creatures. He quickly grabbed his sword and channeled his Futon Chakra through it again. Futon, Judgment Cut. This time spheres of a greenish color appeared around the balls of fire, and due to the slashes being wind-natured, the fireballs grew much larger and flew with more intensity. They impacted with the creatures, kicking up dust and flames. The blonde was far from done though. He flashed to the other side of where the beasts just were, and going through another sequence of seals, slammed his hands on the ground. Doton, Yomi Numa no Jutsu, Earth Release, Swamp of the Underworld, creating a swamp trapping the pack. Amazingly, they seemed to still be able to go, although looking even worse than before, with limbs missing and parts literally melting off at the bone. Quickly, the QB container channeled Raitun Chakra through his blade and slammed it into the chakra swamp, calling out, "Raitun, Jibashi, Lightning Release, Electromagnetic Murder." With the different minerals in the earth as well as the small amounts of water acting as conductors, Naruto was able to send mass amounts of the lightning nature through each and every one of the horrid-looking creatures. Due to how blinding the attack was, nobody knew if the creatures were being hurt by all this or not. Feeling that he had handled it well enough, Naruto stopped the flow of chakra and flicked the mud off his blade. Looking out over the destruction he had just caused, all that could be seen in the mud pit was some charred limbs and nothing else. With a sigh, Naruto relaxed his posture, only to feel Ino hook her arms around his neck and Yakumo snuggle up to his front. "So it looks like your training went well?" smirked his fellow blonde. Haha, yeah, you could say that. Big improvement with my kenjutsu too, chuckled our protagonist. Yeah, I could see that, kiddo. Your mom would definitely be proud of you and how you're using her blade. I smiled, the team scarecrow, setting Ino down and slipping his arm out of Yakumo's grasp. Much to their ire, he walked up to an injured Zabuza and blushing Haku. He smiled at Haku and held his hand out. She was deeply confused at what he was asking her for until she heard Zabuza laugh at her and point at what she currently held clutched to her chest. Realizing that he probably wanted his scabbard back, she handed it over to him, giggling embarrassedly. Naruto just chuckled, shaking his head at her, and sheathed his sword once again, loosely carrying it in his left hand. Kakashi walked up to his student and adoptive little brother and placed a strong hand on his shoulder. So wanna explain what those things were and how you exactly got that strong and fast? Yeah, sure, but it's a long story, so let's move near the river and get comfortable cause it's a pretty long story. At that, the group agreed. They needed the rest. It looked like Haku and Zabuza were going to leave until they were stopped by Naruto. And where do you think you guys are going? Haku was about to speak up, but yet again she was interrupted. This time before she could even make a sound. Didn't I tell you too that you're coming to Konoha to join us? Zabuza gave a hearty laugh at that and just shook his head. You're something else, you know that, kid? Should have met my parents, retorted the smiling blonde. Ino here will patch you up once we get to a good spot, all right? Zabuza just chuckled again and nodded. After taking a leisurely walk with Kakashi helping Zabuza walk in his injured state, the group finally reached their destination. Setting Zabuza down on a patch of grass, Ino got to work on fixing Zabuza as best she could, with Haku also looking at what she was doing. She only knew some very rudimentary skills when it came to Iryo Jutsu, so witnessing someone who actually knew more than her would be a great opportunity. The others took up spots on rocks or leaning against said rocks. Naruto took a spot on a good-sized boulder and crossed his feet into the lotus position. Everyone present gave him a pointed look, and with a sigh Naruto shared with them what all had happened. His training with the help of his ancestor, the Kyuubi becoming more active with their conversations, as well as his training with its powers, etc. Learning about the Kyuubi had been shocking to Haku, but Zabuza knew all about how shinobi villages worked. He had lived long enough to see how most Jinchuriki were treated, and it wasn't pleasant. Haku had no such experience and resolved to find out more about the blonde. Ino and Yakumo of course saw the looks Haku was giving their crush, and all they could do was sigh and facepalm. Naruto was just too good of a guy sometimes. So what are we going to do about our two passengers here? We aren't due to return back to the village for another 2 weeks, so? Kakashi asked. As far as he was concerned, this decision fell to Naruto. He had made the call on all this, so he would leave it up to him. He knew Naruto wasn't stupid and he trusted his decision. It had been Naruto who had gotten them to this point. Well, I don't see any harm in letting them come with us on our little training trip. Not like we're giving out village secrets or anything. I'll let the Sandaime know our situation with our next correspondence in a few days. Kakashi just nodded at that, and the girls grew irritated that they were now going to have an older girl who obviously had a crush on their blonde accompany them. This was going to be an interesting 2 weeks. What did you call me, ice bitch? You know damn well what I said, you blonde bimbo. I'll show you why. What the hell are you doing, Yakumo? The 3 males of the group just sighed for what seemed to be the millionth time that day alone. The first 2 days of traveling together had been rather uneventful, with Zabuza still recovering and Haku trying to get to know Naruto more. The more she learned about the blonde, though, the more she fell for him. He shared such a similar past as her, it was kinda scary actually. Obviously they turned out quite different, but still there were similarities. They viewed those that actually cared for them as precious and would do anything to protect those same people. It actually wasn't until the 3rd day that the girls had begun to bump heads. Haku had come to the decision that Naruto was perfect for her, and coming from similar backgrounds meant that they would be perfect together. This of course didn't sit well with Yakumo, much less Ino. They could hardly go a day without one setting the other off. Not much happened other than yelling and insults being thrown though. They knew that Naruto would not step in, but if they came to blows and actually tried to harm each other, well, he wouldn't have any of it, and getting on his bad side was the last thing any of them wanted to do. Kakashi and Zabuza merely sat back and enjoyed the show. The two had bonded over their shared love of, you guessed it, Aika. Naruto was seriously wondering if the damn thing could be used to bring about world peace or something. He had of course read one of the books, but the appeal had been lost on him. It actually wasn't as smut-filled as most were led to believe, but still he just couldn't see how so many people were such fervent fanatics. "TCH? Pathetic," rumbled the deep voice of Naruto's prisoner. "Hey, at least they're not stuck inside a teenager's body." At the lack of a comeback, Naruto smirked in victory. Over the years, he had come to enjoy the verbal battles with the huge fox. It was especially satisfying when trumped the fix. It boosted his confidence knowing he could win a battle of wits with a 1,000-year-old chakra beast. "Why must you refer to me as if I am genderless or something?" "Wait, you have a gender?" spoke a thoroughly shocked Naruto. "Get your blonde ass in here." And with that, Naruto was gone from the conscious world. "What the hell is all this about, Kyuubi? I was in a tree, I could have fallen." Naruto comically spat. His only response was the form of a strikingly beautiful redhead walking towards the bars. Any further thought he had was cut short as his brain went blank. The woman was beauty given form. Her long blood-red hair flowed like a river of fresh blood that she let loose. It reached her mid-back, and jagged bangs swept to the right covered her forehead, with some of said hair coming down to just above her eyelashes. Her eyes were coated with a small amount of purple eyeliner, further enhancing her crimson eyes. She had a slim figure with healthy curves in all the right places. A tight plump behind with what Naruto estimated to be at least D-cup breasts. Her form was clothed in a loose kimono of dark reds and royal purples that reached to her calves, with a slit in the right leg going up to the beginning of her thigh. The sleeves were detailed with black flames, with the sleeves themselves just stopping short of her knuckles, and the obi was a stretch of pure black that loosely tied around her waist. Her feet were left bare, and both her toenails and fingernails were painted black. He had seen his fair share of good-looking females. Hell, he had some of the hottest in his age range vying for his attention, but this was a woman with womanly curves and assists. The woman had a tick mark form on her forehead as Naruto continued to ogle her. The only thing he was missing was the drool. "You're really no better than your sensei or that old pervert." Even her voice was sexy, with the right amount of raspy, come hither, and femininity. "Hey, I take offense to that. I just have a healthy appreciation for the female body," spoke the indignant Naruto. "Hopefully she buys that." "Hey, dumbass. I can hear thoughts, remember? Sue, you're a girl? I hate you so much right now, I hope you know that." All Naruto could do was hang his head in shame. He prided himself on being rather intelligent and being open to the unexpected, but hey, can you blame him? He just found out that the almighty chakra beast living in his gut was female. A damn hot one at that. "You're being an idiot aside, why the hell would you just assume I was genderless?" spoke a now calm Bijou. "Well, it's kind of hard to think otherwise. You didn't show any features of being either male or female, and you've even said yourself that you're almost entirely made up of chakra, so I kinda just assumed you were genderless." The blonde defended. He had his reasons, damn it. "You're made up almost entirely of chakra too, you dumbass. Why do you think jutsu are even possible? Why depleting your chakra stores is life-threatening?" scolded the fox. "Chakra is called the essence of life for a reason. When you expend chakra, you are essentially using your life energy." And as the fox continued to lecture him on the intricacies of chakra and the like, it all kind of blended into a blur. He was more intently focused on the scientific correlation of how the intensity at which she spoke was directly linked to the physics of. Oh fuck it, he was staring at her tits. His reward for this was getting thumped upside his head by a rather irate kitsune's tail. Again, he just lowered his head in shame, knowing he deserved it. His chin was lifted by a well-manicured black fingernail, only to realize that A. Kyuubi had a couple inches on him height-wise, and B. said Demona's face was currently inches from his own. He was far from being a prude, and you really couldn't be when you had two of the most attractive kunoichi of his generation hanging off of him at every opportunity they got. But again, they would grow into beautiful and sexy women in their own right, but here was a sexy and gorgeous woman inches from him. He was highly tempted to let his eyes wander lower on her form, but knew doing so would mean forfeiting his own life. "Now, Naruto, I would normally beat you to within half an inch of your life for ogling me," the redhead hotly whispered in his ear, sending shivers down his spine out of both arousal and fear. What was that term Kakashi had told him about again? Oh right, a fear-rection. Yeah, he now fully understood that concept. But you see, being as powerful as I am, there has never been a suitable mate worthy of my attention and affection," she continued. "All our lucky bastard of a blonde could do was stand as rigidly as possible. You, my dear blonde," here she raked her nails along his scalp, combing through his golden locks, "have in the span of 6 years come to be as strong as your own father, who many claimed was one of the strongest to grace this world, the same man who, although with assistance, managed to defeat me." Naruto's only response was to stiffly nod his head. She made enough distance to be able to interlock both her arms behind the young blonde's neck, forcing him to stare into her hypnotizing red eyes. "The Sharingan has got nothing on these rubies. At the rate you are going, in maybe 4 years' time, you may well be on my level." She paused here to draw Naruto flush against herself. He damn near went brain dead as all the blood left his upper body, heading down south instead. "You are among the more attractive of your species, and will only become more so as you reach the peak of your body's prowess, and thanks to your blood will remain so for centuries to come. If she doesn't hurry up, I may just pass out. How weird how I can become unconscious in my own mind. What I'm saying is that you, my container, are the only being worthy of being my mate. And I think I am much better of a choice than those petty human girls." Grabbing his wrists, she brought them to wrap around her waist, locking the two into a very intimate and romantic position. "Don't you think so, Naruto?" With a gulp, our blonde hero oddly thought he heard a voice in the back of his mind shout, "Fatality!" before he lost consciousness. As his form faded from his mind, all the Kyuubi could do was shake her head. "I wasn't lying, my dear container. You are the only being who suits me, and I will have you. Mark my words." Naruto expected to find himself waking up in the real world, but instead he found himself waking up in the part of his mind occupied by his ancestor. It looked to be a dark Gothic church of some sort, and he found his ancestor as he usually was, sitting in one of the many pews in the church, staring straight at the painting that took up the entire back wall. The painting was of a figure wielding some sort of massive sword, locked in what looked to be a fight to the death with a similar figure. The figure with the massive broadsword was covered in a cloak of pitch black, while the man opposite him wielded a huge scythe and was covered in a cloak of deep purple. Naruto had always wondered who and what the painting exactly depicted, but didn't bother himself with it too much. If Yamato thought it important, then he would have told him by now. The cloaked blonde walked to the row Yamato was in and took seat fairly close to him. Nothing was said for a while, and Naruto took this time to really examine his ancestor. The man carried himself with an air of authority and poise. He even dressed as such. At this moment, Yamato was wearing what Naruto liked to call his casual clothing. It consisted of a black suit with a dark blue dress shirt, silver tie, and a blue rose in his breast pocket. Yamato himself was tall, towering over Naruto at solid 6 feet 5 inches, and solid but limber muscles meant more for speed than power. He looked to be in his early 30s, with a regal look to his face that was complemented by his black slicked back hair and sharp ice blue eyes. After a few minutes of silence between the two, Yamato finally spoke. "Those creatures, they have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. They were there when I was alive, and probably long before that as well." Naruto was of course shocked, but did not show it on his face, merely giving his ancestor a glance out of the corner of his eyes. "I do not know their origins or even the extent of their powers, but I do know this. They are immune to time as a whole, seem to be at least somewhat intelligent, travel in packs, and they maintain the natural balance of things throughout time and space." He merely gained a curious glance from his blonde descendant, asking him to go on. Still looking straight at the painting, he continued, "They obey the orders of their master, and who I assume to be their creator, a being whose name or face I do not know. The only thing I do know about him is that he governs over time and space and hates any who share our blood. He hates us because we can interfere in the affairs of his kingdom and use powers he feels should only be his, correct?" Naruto said with a neutral tone, also looking straight ahead. He only got a slight nod as his confirmation. "Our clan did not fall because of a botched attempt to plane jump or time travel, did they?" he inquired. "In a manner of speaking, yes and no. They did attempt to do so, but I believe that even these gods have to obey certain laws. My guess is that they may not directly interfere with the affairs of us on our plane unless their domain is directly threatened in some manner. The being used this opportunity to strike at our members." As he said this, there was a clear edge to Yamato's voice that was not there before. The man may seem cold and indifferent to all, but deep down he truly loved his family. "Do you think he knows about me? Or knew about my dad?" "Your father?" Your father may have been able to do something not even I was capable of, but that technique of his uses the barest amount of Namikaze's energy possible in the briefest of periods. You on the other hand? Possibly. I cannot say for sure, but I would be careful when using the higher ranking techniques. If he does not know of you yet, it would be very beneficial to keep it that way, at least until a time when he will no longer be able to pose a threat to you and those around you. Cautioned the regal man. Wait, hold on. You actually expect me to be able to fight a god at some point? Spoke a thoroughly shocked teen. Finally, Yamato turned from looking at the picture to look at Naruto in the eyes. Ice-cold blue met sapphire blue and held the other's gaze for a period of time. During this period of time, nothing at all was said. Not a muscle moved. Yet with this one gaze much was said. Naruto finally tore his eyes away and resumed his calm posture. Likewise, Yamato returned his gaze to the painting. I see, came the quiet voice of Naruto. Yes, and in time you will do, intoned the baritone of his ancestor. For some time silence reigned between the two before Naruto slowly started to fade. The two gave the smallest of glances to each other, and once again Yamato was left to himself. One day, young one, you will be powerful, so powerful that the heavens will be brought to their knees and the 9 hells will bow to you. All will know your name, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Naruto's group had begun to worry when Naruto suddenly fell out of the tree he had been perched in. They knew that a fall like that would never do much if any damage to him of all people, but still it was worrisome. Kakashi explained that he had probably been pulled into his mental plane by either the Kyuubi or his ancestor for something important, which of course was kind of true. As soon as Naruto woke up, he was glomped by 3 very excited girls. Before a fight could break out, he wrapped his arms around all 3 of them and allowed his chakra to flow around them, showing them what he could not say. Kakashi and Zabuza looked on in happiness, but they knew something the girls didn't. They had lived long enough to know what this kind of gesture meant. It was romantic, yes, but underneath that was a very somber tone. The only time they had seen this was when someone had accepted a fate that would tear them away from those they loved. Kakashi gained a steely glint in his eyes. Naruto, your father and mother were the family I lost when I was young, and that makes you family. Whatever you have to face in the coming years, you will not face alone. Those girls will not allow you to do so, and neither will I. Zabuza just grunted. Kid, you've just made all of our lives a hell of a lot more interesting. Hefting his huge sword onto his shoulder, he continued. Wonder what kind of opponents I'll run into now. Gonna need to kick my training into high gear. The next day, we find everyone in the group training individually as hard as they could. For being ninjas of the leaf, they sure like to murder a lot of poor innocent trees. At the sound of a hawk screeching, the group gathered to see a rather plain brown hawk with the leaf insignia on a leather strip it wore around its torso landing on a tree stump. On its back was a leather scroll case, and in the case was a scroll bearing the mark of the Hokage. Naruto stretched his arm out and the hawk made its way to his shoulder, where it opened the case with its beak and, leaning forward, dumped the scroll inside into Naruto's waiting hand. As a reward, Naruto gave it a berry, and with another screech it flapped its wings and was flying back to Konoha. Naruto untied the scroll and after reading it rolled it up and burned it with a minor keton jutsu. Pack it up, guys, Sandame's got a mission for us. This will also be a test of Haku and Zabuza's ability as well as trustworthiness. As such, Haku, you're with me. Zabuza, you're with Kakashi. Our memories of the mission will be used by the Hokage and the Ninja Council to evaluate you. Before he had even finished, the group was packed and ready to head out. Zabuza had easily adjusted to groove of the group, as being a part of the 7 swordsmen as well as Mist, Kirizone and Byu, was much the same. Haku had a bit of a hard time, but having Zabuza as a sensei helped her adjust quickly. It also helped that the object of her affection was now heading her training. Within the 3 days alone, her already astounding speed had been improved upon, and she had even shared with the girls how to perform one-handed seals if need be. So where we headed out to Rudokuin? Asked the bossy blonde of the team. And what are we doing specifically? Inquired the Hayaton user of the group. Naruto leapt off into the trees with the rest of the group, only seconds behind him. We're off to Nami no Kuni to take out that sleazeball Gato of Gato Industries, as well as to secure a trading deal with the village. And with that, not a word more was spoken. It was mission time. They had already been close to the border between Hai no Kuni and Nami, so it had only taken them a day's travel at the pace they had set. As soon as they arrived, they sent Yakumo and Ino into the village to see if they could find any info on Gato's whereabouts. In the meantime, Naruto and Kakashi began to hash out a rough plan of attack, with Zabuza chipping in with any knowledge he had on the guy. Haku was content with using Naruto as a pillow to rest. She was not so used to traveling at such speeds for such long stretches. Sure, her and Zabuza had to run quite often from the Hunter Nin, but they always went with the run fast and hide somewhere plan. Yakumo and Ino shunshined into the clearing, looking quite pleased with themselves. Once they saw Haku, they had the strong urge to say something, but considering this was a mission, and they were in enemy territory, they couldn't, so instead went with giving the girl the stink eye. Kakashi glanced up from the scroll they had been using to hash out their plan and spoke. Report. I found that Gato has 2 different sets of mercs for hire that he uses. The larger group he has living at a compound not too far from here. He also keeps the slaves and such there as well. When Ino got to the part about slaves, she clearly had to hide her anger. She knew what kind of world they lived in and how females like her were viewed, but that didn't make it okay and made her even angrier. Everyone present gave a nod at that and understood what had to be done. Yakumo continued with her piece. Gato himself is holed up on a small island not too far from the mainland. The smaller set of mercs he uses for his bodyguards live there with him on that compound as well. Kakashi and Naruto talked for a bit more before finalizing their plans. Here's how it's gonna go. Myself, along with Haku and Yakumo, will take Gato's personal compound first. Kakashi, along with Zabuza and Ino, will take the bigger compound here on the mainland. Specifics will be shared within your group, but I will say this. My group will hit the island compound first, and when we feel we are close to completing our part 1, we'll send out the signal for you 3 to begin your part. Got it? Naruto received a chorus of "hi" from his team for the mission. Also remember that if you find yourself in need of help, flare your chakra 2 times in quick succession. If you cannot do that, use the seal I have given all of you to communicate to myself, all right? He spoke once more, receiving a chorus of "hi." Remember that these are the scum of the earth. Leave none of them alive, understood? This time he only got solemn nods and one bloodthirsty grin. They may not like it, but they could not let them live so that they could continue to cause harm to others. With that, both groups vanished from the clearing, leaving no trace they had even been there in the first place. Night had draped its starry cloak over the world by the time the groups were set and ready to do what they had been trained to do since they were children. Tonight the moon's light seemed to be dimmer than it had ever been, as if the gods were giving the team the advantage. Naruto had donned his cloak, zipping it up, and putting the hood on, making him resemble his old sensei. The sheath of his okatana was put away in a storage seal he had on himself, and the blade itself shined in the dim light. Yakumo had her paints at the ready just in case she had need of them, though she doubted that. She only needed the paints to amplify the power of her genjutsu when she was up against powerful nin, and these were just some hired grunts. Haku had donned the oinin, hunter nin, mask she had, and was garbed in an all-black battle kimono with mesh covering any exposed part of her body. Remember, hit as many as you can as stealthy as possible. If you get caught and have to resort to jutsu, then do so, but only if need be. The less chakra we waste here, the better. Turning to Yakumo, he continued. Take care of as many guards as you can. Me and Haku will take Gato himself. He received only nod as his response. Yakumo had killed before, of course, but it still bothered her deep down, and she was taking the time to mentally prepare herself for the massacre she was going to commit. Finally, a glimmer of the moon's light shone through the clearing, only to reveal nothing. Hey Dan, you and the others up for a karja? Didash asterisk gurgle asterisk. And the merc breathed his last, victim to one of Haku's sunban puncturing his throat. His friend Dan had met his end thanks to Naruto's blade liberating his head from his shoulders. Naruto noticed Haku twitch as she killed and simply placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. As she calmed, she gave him a nod, and with that they were off, leaping through the shadows of the night, heading for Gato. Yakumo was leisurely strolling through the compound like a ghost, making not a single noise, and trailing behind her were corpses littering the floors. Any who noticed her were met with death before they could make a sound. Some were fortunate enough to not even notice her thanks to her genjutsu and died without even realizing it. Blood dripped from her hands, and her long brown hair fell in waves covering her face as she continued her walk of death. "Hey, you can't dash. was all the tattooed merc could get out before Yakumo slashed his throat open with her kunai showering the floor in his blood and leaving yet another corpse for the creatures of the island. Man, this midget pays some good money and all, but he is way too fucking paranoid. Shit kinda gets irritating, muttered a wannabe samurai to his buddy for the night. Quiet out there, yelled the fat mouse that was Gato. None of them knew that their members in the lower levels were currently being massacred by a 12-year-old genin. And none of them knew that only Gato and these two poor guards were the only ones left living on the upper flowers. If either the two guards would have checked just outside the door to the hallway they were in, they would seen the very walls and floors of the building stained in the life liquid of their comrades. Heads lying nowhere near where their bodies were, and bodies nailed to the walls by senbon of ice. The samurai's buddy turned to give him a reply only to see the corpse of said man in the hands of an oinin, who currently held senbon in between her knuckles that were holding the man up by his neck. He turned to open the door only to be bisected down the middle of his body by Naruto's blade. The cloaked teen flicked the blood off of his blade and with a nod to Haku opened the massive doors to Gato's office. They found the man behind his desk doing some type of paperwork. They waited for the short man to notice them. He looked up and questioned, "Who the hell are you? I know for sure you're not on my payroll." When he received no response, he snorted, "I guess you're here to look for a job then. Talk to Hiro outside about it." When he still didn't receive a response, he got up and yelled, "What the fuck do you two want?" Finally garnering some response, the two turned towards the door and Gato smirked, thinking he had gotten through to them, only to receive a view that almost made him vomit. His hallway and the room outside was littered with the corpses of his men. He was far too shocked to even say anything and merely stared wide-eyed at the massacre. Then he saw who he thought to be a ghost appear. Instead, he saw it was only a young girl. He would have made a comeback if he didn't notice that her hands were dripping with blood. The brunette turned to the other two and muttered, "Lower floors are clean." Gato nearly shat himself at that. His whole compound dead? Gato grinned and began to chuckle to himself. The three returned their attention back to the poor excuse of a human being. At the snap of his fingers, two missing nin shot from the rafters, calling out, "Suetun! Suedan no jutsu! Water release! Water bullet!" Naruto stepped forward slightly and slashed his sword horizontally, calling out, "Futon! Daitapa no jutsu! Wind release! Great breakthrough!" sending out a wave of wind that overpowered the two Suetun jutsus with ease. Before the two rogue Kirinin could counter, one received several water senbon through the neck, the other a kunai through his skull. As he saw his men get murdered with such ease, Gato tried to think of any escape route possible, but he could think of nothing. These three had slaughtered everyone in his compound without him noticing until it was too late. So he resorted to the only thing he could think of to save his pathetic life: begging. "What is it you want? Money? Land? Women? I'll give you anything you want, just let me live." The man groveled to the three, even going as far as to get on his knees. Naruto walked up to him and let a scroll fall to the ground. "Any and all safe codes, bank numbers, and the location of anything else with value." Naruto spoke in a monotone. Scrambling, the man began to write it all down, especially when he felt the cold steel of a blade at his throat. "Yes, yes, of course." When he finished, he handed the scroll back to Naruto, who gave it to Yakumo. "You and Haku go and gather as much as you can." With a nod, they were gone. Gato looked up towards the man. "I can go, right? You said you'd let me live." His only response was Naruto turning towards the man and muttering, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Kudos to anyone who knows where this is from." And with a flick of the wrist, Gato's head was sent flying across the room. The three raided every single vault Gato had written down, and once they were done putting all the assorted jewels, scrolls, and money they could fit into ceiling scrolls, they met atop a hill a distance from the massive compound. With a single thought, a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, appeared to his right. Both went through a series of hand seals, and the real Naruto called out, "Katun! Goryuka no Jutsu! Fire release! Great Dragon Fire!" releasing a blaze in the shape of a dragon's head the size of a small house, with his clone calling out, "Futon! Daitapa no Jutsu!" Not moments later, the whole compound was set ablaze by the flames. The three watched as it burned for a minute before they vanished, heading for the bigger compound on the main island. The massive fire had been the signal for the other three to begin their own assault. Kakashi, Ino, and Zabuza saw the fire and felt the spike of chakra and prepared for their part of the mission. Ino, remember, you go and free any and all captives. Me and Zabuza will take care of the rest. And with that, they leapt into the middle of the compound with the attention of all the mercs on them. Before the paid soldiers could even say something stupid, Kakashi and Zabuza had completed the seals for their techniques. Zabuza shouting, Sway Tun, Suryuden no Jutsu, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet, summoning forth a massive dragon of water, and with a watery growl it rushed towards a group of gathered mercenaries. Kakashi calling out his own elemental dragon with Rai Tun, Raryuden, Lightning Release, Lightning Dragon Bullet. Those hit by either of the two techniques were the lucky ones. Their deaths were quick and over with, their comrades would not be so lucky. With a nod to each other, both powerful nines were off in flashes, Kakashi with his signature Raikiri in hand and Zabuza wielding his massive Zanbatsu. Kakashi cut a path through merc after merc with his electrified hand. There would have been much more blood spray if it were not for the heat of the technique immediately cauterizing any and all wounds it caused. This, of course, was causing more damage and pain than anything else. Instead of bleeding out to death quickly, those who fell victim to the jutsu would live long enough to feel all the pain of their body slowly start shutting down. That is, if they had enough of their body still connected to feel it. Zabuza was carving a much bloodier path through his part of the compound. With as big as his sword was, one sweep of it was taking out 3 men at a time. He grinned, showing off his sharp teeth as he felt the blood of his victims bathe him. He did not care that some of the men he hit were not completely dead but were instead left to live out the last few minutes of their life looking on in horror as their separated limbs twitched with the last nerve impulses left in them like some sick real-life version of a zombie. Ino was much quieter about her approach, though just as gruesome. Any unlucky enough to cross her path were met with a slow, agonizing death due to whatever poison happened to be on that particular kunai or senbon. Some felt acid burn its way through their very veins until nothing was left of them. Others suffocated as their lungs shut down and stopped pumping air, and others felt all of their organs get shut down by the electric shocks coursing through their bodies. She felt no remorse for these men. To her, they were the scum of the earth and deserved worse for the things they had subjected the people they captured to. She finally reached the massive tent that had housed said prisoners, and the guards who were there leering at her in lust received a senbon carrying a poison of her making. She called it Shini no Seppun, or the kiss of death. All the blood in the victim's body would flow upwards, filling their heads until it literally poured out of every hole on their head. Guess where I stole this from? Hint. It's a kung fu movie that came out in the mid-2000s. She walked into the tent expecting to find people locked up in cages or something, only to find her cloaked crush breaking the last of the chains off the prisoners. At her questioning glance, all he said was, Kage Bunshin. She just nodded. Leave it to Naruto to try and save everyone. Boss wants you to take them and meet up with Yakumo and Haku outside in the forest. Once you're all together, take them back to the village. Boss said that he, Zabuza, and Kakashi will take care of this place. Makes sense. Those 3 can unleash some pretty devastating jutsu without worrying about chakra exhaustion. Yakumo, Haku, and myself are meant for smaller scale missions. Those 3 can do that and battles on a bigger scale. With that in mind, she hushed the prisoners and led them out of the tent and made her way to the forest with the small group of prisoners following. The Naruto clone looked at the redhead who had stayed with him in curiosity. In other circumstances, he was sure she was a bombshell in the league of his tenant, but right now she was covered in mud, blood, and other such filth. Her hair was knotted and in disarray, and she looked to have been starved for quite some time. Luckily, it looked like she had been able to stop them from doing to her what they had done to the other women. Before she could say anything to her cloaked savior, he poofed away only for the same figure to walk through the flaps of the tent. She bowed to him and said, Thank you for saving me. Any longer and I would have been victim to a fate much worse than death. I owe you my life. He dismissed it with the wave of hand and instead asked, Why stay here? I doubt it was to thank me. I am actually a kunoichi and I want to exact some revenge on these scumbags. Normally I would be able to do so myself, but they have been drugging me for the past month, and so I can only do some lower level jutsu, was her reply. Naruto nodded at that. He did not exactly condone needless revenge or grudges, but this was a different matter. They had been only a day or so from raping this poor woman and had already beaten and starved her. He could not blame her for wanting some revenge. He reached into his cloak and tossed her a pouch full of kunai. Though I have no doubt of your claim at being powerful at this moment, you are not, and me and my comrades wish to wipe this place off the map, so please stay close to me, miss? Alright, my name is Mei Terumi of Kiri. He gave her a nod and turned to leave with the redhead following him. A random merc who thought he could take them on rushed the two only to receive a kunai to the skull. Naruto glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. The two continued on with Mei tossing kunai occasionally and Naruto dispatching others with sword swipes or quick jutsu use. They came upon the center of the compound to find Naruto's comrades, and Mei was shocked to find out who they were. Sharingan no Kakashi and Zabuza Momoichi? Who is this guy to have comrades as strong as them? Kakashi and Zabuza glanced at Naruto and immediately jumped to his sides. So who's the redhead? Grunted the crazed Kiranin. My name is Mei Terumi, Zabuza, spoke the indignant redhead. Woe of the Terumi clan? Damn Gaki, you sure have a knack for picking up some powerful allies, huh? Chuckled the blood-soaked man. Yeah, you could say that. You guys done? He saw their nods and continued, Alright, let's finish this then. Naruto grabbed Mei bridal style and the three vanished to a hilltop not too far off. Naruto went through a chain of seals building a massive amount of chakra before calling out, Rantun. Gakido no Susanoo. Storm release. Wrath of the Storm God. Roughly. Sending out gale force winds from his right palm, while the other fired what looked to be actual thunderbolts. With as much chakra as he had put into the technique, the winds crushed and flattened everything in the compound, and anything that was left was burned to a crisp by the bolts of lightning. In the end, nothing but a charred clearing the size of a small town was left. All Mei could do was gape at the amount of destruction this one man had caused with one technique. What was more was he didn't even look winded by it. The four turned when they heard a whistle to see Ino, Yakumo, and Haku staring at the destruction as well. The group as one turned to stare at what was once a place of vile and disgusting people doing even worse things. Not wanting to linger much longer, Naruto once more picked up the Terumi, and they were gone, leaving the rest to nature to fix. The group returned to the village to be met by a thunderous roar of applause and cheering. It seemed that the captives had informed the rest of the village of what these people had done for them. Naruto and his friends smiled as this was the reason they did what they did. A little girl ran up to Naruto's leg. He smiled as he looked down at the girl who could be no older than 4 years old. She put out her arms to say that she wanted to be picked up. The parents of the girls ran up to him attempting to apologize for the girl's behavior, only to gasp as he picked her up, only for the girl to yank on his hood, pulling it off. They expected to be greeted by the face of a scarred man well into his years, and even Mei was expecting this, but instead the hood had hidden the face of golden-haired teen with regal features and the brightest blue eyes anyone had ever seen. Naruto almost instantly gained a fan base at this exact moment. Instead of getting mad, he merely chuckled and placed the girl on his shoulders, much to the little girl's delight. Thoughts of how good a father he was going to be echoed through the heads of almost every girl there, and Mei found herself debating on seducing this boy. No man in front of her. Powerful beyond his years? Cunning? Handsome? And great with kids? I may have just found my future husband. Looking at herself though, she sweat-dropped. Should probably get cleaned up before I try and seduce him though. An old man wearing a hard hat and with a noticeable beer gut walked up to the group and bowed to them. I speak not only for my family but for all the people of this village when I thank you for rescuing our fellow civilians. Naruto walked up to him with the girl still on his shoulders and reaching into his coat pulled out a sealing scroll. He laid it on the ground and pushing a small amount of chakra into it called out a stack of files as well as several large sacks. The sacks are filled to the brim with jewels, gems, and other assorted valuables. The files are several deeds of land as well as business ownership titles that we liberated from Gato. I return them to you and the village. Tears filled the eyes of everyone present. Team 7+2 was met with yet another round thunderous applause and screams of joy. With teary eyes, the man looked up to the teen and said, "How can we ever repay you? We've taken a cut of the valuables as payment for the mission. The only other thing you can do is once you are back on your feet to seek out a trade agreement with Konoha," spoke the lazy one-eyed Jounin. Turning to the silver-haired man, the old drunk frantically nodded. "Of course, it's the least we can do. Then we'll be off now. Gotta get back to our village after all." Naruto calmly spoke. As they began to leave, Mei latched onto Naruto's back, where he almost passed out from a nosebleed when he felt her rather large assets pushing against his back. The girls face palmed and Kakashi and Zabuza laughed at this turn of events. "Hey, what the hell? You like her boobs but not mine? Mine are just as big as hers," shouted the Kyuubi, sending him the mental image of her pressing her breasts up with her arms and pouting. Now is not the time for that, damn it. After having made it a little more than halfway to Konoha, the group decided to finally rest. It had been a long day and they had been working since the night before without rest. It helped to get their minds off of what they had done, but at some point their bodies needed rest. Finding a clearing near one of the many waterfalls that were scattered in High no Kuni's forests, the group decided it was the perfect place to do so. The girls, Mei included, went off to the waterfall to wash the grime and filth off of them while the guys would set up camp. Naruto was of course getting highly irritated, as every time Zabuza or Kakashi would look at him they would burst into a laughing fit. It had been fine the first 2 times, but after the 50th time it was grating on his last nerve. Right as he turned around to threaten the two with his blade, his jaw dropped because the girls chose that same moment to return from their pseudo-bath. He had of course seen Ino and Yakumo close to nude various times, and although he wasn't necessarily desensitized to it, it didn't affect him as much. Haku had a few years on the two but was much more modest in the clothing department, so she wasn't the reason for his reaction. No, his reaction was because of Mei. He had been right when he assumed she was beautiful when cleaned, but he had been in battle mode at that point, so that little tidbit had been forgotten in all the haste and bloodshed. Now, however, he could truly appreciate the view that was Mei Terumi. Her long flowing red hair, now free of knots and such, shined in the setting sun. It reached well past her pert bottom and covered one of her aqua-green eyes, giving her a very enticing come-hither look. The woman wore no makeup, leaving her flawless porcelain skin on display, and he could only see makeup marring such a face. The other eye-catching detail was what she was wearing, or lack thereof. She wore what little rags were left of her clothes, showing off her full curves in just such a way that left just enough to the imagination to make people want more. She couldn't really be blamed, as she had been a prisoner only a few hours ago, so there was not much she could do about that. The woman sauntered up to Naruto, making sure his eyes were on only her. Kakashi and Zabuza meanwhile were off to the side, dying of laughter at the expense of Naruto's pride. The girls could do nothing more than seethe in jealousy, as they knew the woman was strong, probably on Kakashi's level. Inside of Naruto, another redhead vying for his affections was muttering assorted curses and devising ways to get rid of the water slut. As Mei finally reached Naruto, she slid her hands over the blonde's shoulders, and with as sexy a voice she could muster, which was damn sexy mind you, she said, "See something you like?" And at that the Jinchuriki had to use every single ounce of willpower to keep his mouth shut and stop himself from looking like an idiot. Instead, Naruto just gulped and nodded his head slightly. "I'm glad that my very handsome savior likes what he sees." Trailing a delicate finger across Naruto's jawline, she continued, "I still have yet to repay you for that, don't I?" Finally gathering what was left of his dignity at this point, Naruto managed to mutter out, "It was no problem, just what I do." "Well, regardless of that, I still owe you quite literally my life. So my dear savior, what is it you want? I'll give you." And here she leaned her head to literally breathe the next word into his ear. "Anything." A stray thought in the back of his mind wondered if he should help Zabuza and Kakashi, as they looked damn close to dying from lack of oxygen. Before he could make even more of a fool of himself, the younger girls had had enough of the red-headed slut hitting on my man and dove into action. At this I mean Haku threw Senbon aimed at certain nerve clusters that would render the redhead unconscious. Naruto, being Naruto, attempted to save Mei by moving her out of the way. The consequence of these actions left the girls even more jealous. The one-eyed wonder and his eyebrowless partner unconscious from a nosebleed, and our lucky bastard of a protagonist with a set of very pert, soft, and bare D-cups pressed to his cloaked chest. His last thought before he embraced the darkness that was unconsciousness was, "These girls are either going to make me the happiest man on earth or send me to an early grave. Don't know which I prefer." Naruto woke to find himself with his head laying in the lap of the one responsible for his little nap. Before he could return to that nap once more, he gathered as much willpower as he had left, took off his cloak, and offered it to the Kiri beauty. She pouted at him and said, "What, you don't like what you see?" Pushing her large assets together further accentuation them, if that was even possible. Trust me, Mei-san, I really like what I see, but I don't think entering Konoha with you like that will be the easiest of affairs, so if you would, was his blunt reply. She inwardly smirked at his comment, and so it begins. Faking a sigh, she continued. Fine, but only if you don't call me Mei-san. Call me Mei-chan. Naruto conceded, and she took his offered cloak. As she zipped the cloak to cover herself up, Naruto sweat dropped, thinking, glad sensei put seals on it so it could expand if need be, otherwise I'd never be able to wear it again. You know, Naruto-ku, and I may just keep this cloak of yours. Hugging herself, she squealed. It's just so comfy and warm. Crying anime tears, Naruto thought. That cloak was a gift from sensei too. It made me look so badass. Childish thoughts aside, Naruto's eyes instantly grew serious. Now I know Gato and his men have done some despicable things, but capturing Kunoichi? As far as I know, he was never that stupid, and Kiri is quite the travel from Nami. So how did you end up in his filthy hands? Mei's shoulders sagged and her face dropped all pretense of emotion. The rest of Naruto's group were at his side as well, all joking gone. I'm sure you all know of the less than great state Kiri is in right now. At that, Zabuza scoffed and Haku turned her head away. Noticing their responses, she sighed again before continuing, well, I'm actually on a mission. As soon as that was out of her mouth, Zabuza's Zanbatsu was around her neck waiting for her to give him a reason to show why it was called the Kubikurbocho, decapitating carving knife. No one moved a muscle to help her. Minutes passed in tense silence before, in a commanding voice, Naruto called, Zabuza, remove the blade. Zabuza was going to question him when he saw the look in the teen's eyes. "'Tisich better not be a mistake, Gaki," was all he said before lifting the blade from her throat. Mei sighed in relief before she noticed that only herself, Haku, and Zabuza seemed to be questioning his decision. In his position, she would have let Zabuza do what he was known for. The blonde container looked at her and said, people in my family have been known to show some empath powers. Due to certain circumstances beyond my control, that sense was amplified, and I can now tell exactly how people around me feel. Her eyes widened at this. He was a friggin' human lie detector. He knew to trust her because he could damn near read her mind. Zabuza just chuckled. Gaki, is there no end to your surprises? Chuckling himself, Naruto replied, like I said, remember who my parents are. Hey, yeah, who are your parents? I mean, to have a kid like you, they got to have been really powerful themselves, and the only blondes to come from Konoha are Yamanakas, and unless Blondie over there is into incest, that... No way. Mei's jaw dropped as she realized who his dad was. Haha, yup, dear old daddy was the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto smirked. This guy is perfect. No wonder he's as strong as he is. He's probably had people like Kakashi and the Sandaime Hokage himself training him since he could walk. And if I'm right, he's the Kyuubi's container as well. Who was his mother, though? Kushina Uzumaki. At Mei's confused look, Naruto elaborated. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki. Mei's jaw met the floor once again. Holy shit, the last of the Uzumaki was his mother? Jackpot. Now that you don't need to be worried about being decapitated, would you continue with your story? Kakashi drawled out. Huh? Alright. Well, I was on a mission, but not for the Mizukage. I'm actually the leader of the rebel faction in Kiri, and I went on a diplomatic mission hoping that Konoha would aid us in our cause. Mei said, looking down. I was turned away because the Sandaime did not want to involve his village. She looked up when she heard Naruto scoff. She got angry at him, thinking he scoffed at her for being dumb. But what he said next shocked her. Not surprised. Up until about a month ago, the man sitting behind that chair was just the shell of a once feared Kage. He received varying reactions at this. Kakashi grimaced and looked away. Ino and Yakumo shook their heads, and Mei was shocked that such a powerful nin would talk bad about his own Kage. He went on to say, it's a long story better saved for when we're in Konoha, but I will say this, if you were to come with us and ask him now, he would definitely say yes. Like I told these two, I got some major pull with the old monkey. Mei's eyes widened as this one man had saved her from a fate worse than death and was now going to help her save her village. All in the span of a few hours. She put her head down, letting her hair cover her face. Before anyone could question her, she leapt straight at Naruto and began crying into his chest. Naruto's face just dropped and he wrapped his arms around her, just letting her release all the pent-up emotions she had. Haku felt sympathy for the woman, knowing what it was like to live in Kiri and have a Kekkei Genkai. Add on to that the stress of having to maintain a certain image as head of the rebels and almost falling victim to a horrid fate, and no one there could blame the redhead for her reaction. She was only human and could only take so much, and now here was someone who was essentially relieving her of a good chunk of that stress, and not out of greed or lust but because he felt it the right thing to do. "Damn, it feels like we've been gone for a year or something, any?" questioned the blonde Uzumaki as he and his group gazed at the massive gates of Kanahagakure no Sato after having been gone for a little over a month. Ino and Yakumo smiled, excited to be home once more and be able to see their families again. Haku and Zabuza smiled as this was going to be their new home, a safe place where they wouldn't have to watch their backs 24/7. Kakashi continued to read his little book, but you could see a grin on his masked face at finally being home too. Naruto. He had missed one thing only: his ramen. With that in mind, he led his merry band of misfits with smiles on their faces to the gates of the place they called home. "Hey, isn't that?" "Haha, yup, I'd recognize that blonde hair anywhere," spoke a chuckling Izumo. With smiles on their faces, Izumo and Kotetsu greeted Team 7. Only to grow shocked at Naruto with two more very attractive ladies hanging off of him. At that, they just chuckled and shook their heads. Only Naruto would leave to train and come back with two hotties. However, they grew nervous as they laid eyes upon the massive, imposing figure that was a grinning Zabuza Momoichi. Shaking in their sandals, they looked to Kakashi for answers. Still reading his little orange book, the pervert lazily said, "He's with us. Gonna be joining Konoha as a nin, all thanks to our favorite blondie over there." The two eternal gate guards just shakily nodded their heads and let the group through the gates. As soon as Naruto saw the inside of the village, he attempted to speed off to his own personal slice of heaven, only to have Kakashi grab him by his collar. Now, Naruto, you gotta talk to the Hokage about these three like you said you were. And you don't go back on your word, do you?" The blonde just childishly pouted and huffed at having his nindo used against him in such a way. With that, Naruto and Kakashi sunshined the group to the Hokage's reception area. The receptionist looked up at the sound of a shunshin being performed only to facepalm at the nervously grinning Uzumaki and his massive group, and with the other hand pointed towards the Hokage's doors, giving permission to go in. As Naruto opened the doors to the Sandame's office, he was greeted by said man smiling, which he only returned with a bow. The Sandame's smile noticeably dropped, but he still smiled as the rest of Team 7 filed in. Said smile turned into a very confused look as they were followed by an A-rank missing nin, who he assumed was said nin's apprentice, and a very busty redhead he swore he recognized from somewhere. "I'm glad that you're back, Team 7, but may I ask why the Kirigakure no Kijin, demon of the hidden mist, is in my office?" asked a very casual Hokage. He knew he was old and that Zabuza was powerful in his own right, but this was his home turf, and even at his age he was confident enough to be able to smack Zabuza and even his apprentice around. Kakashi lazily pointed a thumb at Naruto. Hiruzen just ran his hands down his face. Of course Naruto had something to do with this. If I didn't know better, I'd think he was slowly trying to kill me by raising my blood pressure. "Genin Naru dash." "Whoa, hold on," spoke a very shocked Mei, her face mirrored by Haku and Zabuza. Pointing a finger at Naruto, she continued, "He's a genin?" Ino and Yakumo popped up with grins on their faces. "Actually, we're all genin. Graduated almost 2 months ago." Silence reigned in the office for close to a minute before Zabuza began chuckling, which then evolved to him rolling on the floor holding his sides. Team 7 and the Hokage thought that he had lost whatever tiny shred of his sanity he still had. Finally getting his breathing under control and wiping a tear from his eyes, he slammed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Gaki? What the fuck?" And he continued his laughing. Mei then pointed a cussing finger at Hiruzen. She began, "What the hell, old man? If that's how strong your genin are, my cause would only need like 4 jounin, and we could wrap up the civil war in no time." Hiruzen released a small amount of his chakra, showing them he meant business. Now, if you would have asked, you would know that this team is not average, far from it. Naruto here has been training since he was 8 Yeah, I kinda figured, being who his parents were and all. I mean, you probably had a hand in his training, right? Mei's only response was the Hokage lowering his head in shame and Kakashi turning away. Naruto chose to speak up at this moment. "No, they did not. Only 2 people are responsible for my current strength, and they are my old sensei Vincent and myself." Mei was shocked at this revelation. He got this strong pretty much on his own? Unbelievable. Wait, what about those two? She said, pointing at the girls of Team 7. In return, they pointed at Naruto. Ino spoke. If it wasn't for him, I'd still be some stupid and pathetic fangirl focused more on her looks and dieting than being an actual kunoichi. Yakumo stepped forward, covering her mouth with her long sleeves as usual, and said, If I hadn't met him, I wouldn't be here. My mind would have been locked away inside my body, leaving a demon to take over and try and destroy Konoha. He trained himself to be damn near Kage level and then saved these girls and trained them to be stronger than most B-rank nin. Yeah, I so gotta have him now. Dirty thoughts aside, Mei bowed to Hiruzen and then Naruto. My apologies for jumping to conclusions, with both Naruto and Sarutobi waving her off, not in the least bothered by it, though she had brought up a sore spot in the Hokage. As I was saying, Jen and Naruto, why did you bring an A-rank missing nin, his apprentice, and a wanted woman into my office? Hokage-sama, I think that adding a former member of the Kirigakure no Shinobigatana Shishininshu would be a great boon to our forces, as well as offering a wealth of knowledge of some more underground things. Adding his apprentice, who herself is at least low jounin in strength and posses, the Yuki clan's Hayatan Kekai Genkai, to our numbers at the same time would just give us even more strength. Sarutobi stroked his beard as he thought about it all. It was a win-win as far as the village was concerned, and with a well-known jounin and one of the village's royal clan's names backing the two, their integration would be almost seamless. The young Yuki heiress would pose no problems as she never affiliated herself with a village to begin with. Zabuza, on the other hand, would be an issue. Although the villages had no laws on taking in other villages missing nin due to how hard it was to reach even the smallest of agreements in the first place, it was still a touchy matter. However, with Kiri too absorbed in their current civil war, there would be almost zero backlash to deal with. With that in mind, he began looking through his desk for two files. Finding them, he offered one to Haku. This document here states that you are willingly becoming a citizen of Konoha and that you will abide by any and all of its laws. As for your joining the Ninja Corps, we will deal with that in 3 days' time, so be prepared for that. All you have to do is sign your name here. And with a smile on her porcelain face, she did just that. Afterwards, the Hokage stamped it with his seal and set aside for later filing. Turning to Zabuza, he placed another paper on the desk. Your situation is a bit more complicated. There are no laws against you joining us, but there will still be some weariness. As such, you must sign this paper submitting yourself to 2 mental evaluations, a physical, as well as being followed by a team of umbu for a month. At the end of the month, your probationary period will be up, and if you have met our standards, then you will be tested to see where you stand in our village's ranks. Zabuza looked to the smiling face of his adoptive daughter and the gaki responsible for his current situation. Shrugging, he said, I got nothing to lose and a lot to gain, so fuck it. And with that sentiment, he signed the paper. Folding his hands together, he turned to Mei. Now to deal with your situation. You have come here before asking for assistance, and I turned you down, and yet here you are again. What makes you think I will have changed my mind? At that, Mei lowered her head in depression, thinking it was all for naught. However, she looked up as she felt a hand placed on her shoulder. Turning, she found a pair of shining blue eyes filled with confidence and determination. Looking at the Kage, Naruto asked, If I may plead her case for her? Waving his hand, Hiruzen said, You may. Stepping forward, Naruto intoned, I believe that you were, pardon my use of words, Hokage-sama, mistaken when you turned her down, which he received even more looks of shock from the room's occupants. Gaki's got a big brass pair to say that. I mean, I planned a coup, but damn to say it to his face? Konoha is known for the astounding amount of emphasis we put on the concept of teamwork, and for good reason. Some of our strongest ninja to this day were the Sannin, powerful on their own, but working as a team, they were feared across the nations, even earning the respect of Hanzo the Salamander. What I am getting at is that if you turn down having another of the 5 great villages as an ally, you will be spitting on the very thing we stand for. Chuckling, Sarutobi shook his head. My boy, you would make a great politician. Turning to a hopeful Mei, he continued, I will allot you as much as my village can offer in the Department of Resources as well as manpower. And here Mei's face burst into a huge grin, and she smothered Naruto into her cleavage, suffocating the lucky bastard. However, you must submit to 2 requests. And with that, Mei dropped a gasping Naruto to the floor. Anything in my power, Hokage-sama, she said while bowing. You must come and talk a treaty with me when you have stabilized your village, and you must take a certain ninja. Confused faces broke out in the room while Naruto was slowly trying to sneak out, having a feeling he knew who the Sandaime was talking about. You must take Naruto as an overseer and ambassador of sorts. The room's occupants as one turned to catch Naruto right as he put his foot on the railing of the Hokage's balcony. Fuck, was his last word as he leapt out into the village. The Hokage, Kakashi, and Zabuza laughed as he was pursued by a bickering group of rather powerful kunoichi, while his tenant encouraged him to run away from the sluts who don't deserve to touch my mate. Turning to the portrait of Minato and his wife Hiruzen smiled. You'd be proud of the man your boy has become. I know I am. Someday his legend may just overshadow even your own Minato, but that's how it works, right? The younger generation is always meant to surpass the past generation. Kinda. Looking up into the heavens, we find a certain blonde and his beautiful wife looking down on their son. My baby is gonna give me so many grandkids, cried the hysterical redhead. Make your old man proud and show him what the Namikaze men are capable of, shouted the grinning Yondaime. Hey Kushi-chan, do you think Tsum still remembers that contract we set up? As her husband said that, she once again burst into hysterics. Make Kei-chan proud. I've missed you so much, my beloved, cried our blonde protagonist in ecstasy, while the females vying for his attention only wished they could make him half as happy as that. What could our favorite blonde be yelling about in such a manner? If you've got to ask, then you really don't know Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze that well. We find him in his version of the happiest place on earth. I have nothing to do with Disney. Don't sue me, Mr. Mouse. Ichiraku Ramen. The females present, I am included, could only sweat drop at his reaction to the noodles. Oh, Savior Kuin, sang the sultry voice of Mei. Turning his attention to her, he spat out whatever noodles he had in his mouth at that time due to the image in front of him. Mei had as of yet to give him his cloak back, and she was taking advantage of how much cleavage she could show off with it by having the noodles dangling just above her glorious D-cups. He would have fallen for her seductive ways if it wasn't for a tap on the shoulder. Turning around, his attention was turned to Yakumo, who was using her cute factor to its utmost potential. She was pouting like a kicked puppy, while somehow also maintaining her beauty and offering Naruto her own noodles. Why don't you try some of my noodles, Narukuin? He would have fallen for this as well if he didn't feel a pair of rather nice, almost C-cups pressed against his back. Craning his neck around, he found his fellow blonde slurping up noodles in the sexiest way possible. She winked at him before offering him a noodle and a view of her cleavage. Yet again he was interrupted by someone making their way into his lap. Looking down, he found his vision obscured by raven black tresses, only to feel a hand lead his face down to enjoy some of Haku's delicious noodles. No sooner had he opened his mouth to enjoy that piece of heaven, only to have it robbed from him as the girls began a cat fight over whose noodles their crush would eat. All the blonde could do was facepalm, and not wanting to get into a fight he would lose, resigned himself to eating his own bowl. Much to his great anger, though, this too was robbed from him as the comical dust storm of limbs that was the Uzumaki harem knocked against the table right as he had dipped his chopsticks in. All eyes were on the bowl as it seemingly fell in slow motion, taking several minutes to hit the ground and shatter, spilling its contents on the floor. Silence filled the small stand, everyone too afraid to even breathe and set off the time bomb that was a ramen-deprived Naruto. The wrath of such a thing so legendary in the village that even passerbys had frozen so as not to incur the anger of the ramen addict. Even the wildlife around the village had fled the scene, sensing the impending doom. In the Hokage's office, the Sandaime looked up and shook his head, praying for whatever poor soul had messed with Naruto's ramen. Deep underground in the T&I torture and interrogation department, the man known across the nations as the most gruesome and horrifying interrogator, Marino Ibiki, shivered. Yes, even a man so seemingly fearless shook in terror. Across the nations, all the Jinchuriki looked towards the direction of Konoha. No matter how far away they were or what they were doing, they looked as they felt the amount of anger radiating from their brother. Even the emotionless Gaara shook in fear as the cries of his mother went from screaming for blood to quiet pleas of forgiveness. Inside of Naruto, the powerful and sexy Kyuubi was torn between being extremely turned on by her container's anger or cowering in fear, so she chose to do both at the same time. Ever so slowly, Naruto's form began to turn on his stool to face the girls, his eyes shadowed by his bangs. The girls immediately hit the floor, prostrating themselves as if they had angered a god and not their crush. Naruto muttered a small, "We need to talk," that echoed throughout the extremely quiet village, and soon he and the girls were gone. As soon as his form left the stand, it seemed as if the whole world breathed a sigh of relief. The girls found themselves in a beautiful garden with Naruto standing only feet away. They immediately began to apologize and thinking of ways to show just how sorry they were. Most of these thoughts almost instantly went straight into the gutter, involving handcuffs and in some cases a whip or a ball gag. Kafe cheikeuko waikeyomo cuff. All the Uzumaki could do was sweat drop as the girls started to drool and get a glazed look in their eyes. It got even worse. Better? Yeah, better, as he heard the voice of his tenant. Punish your Q-chan for being bad. God damn it, not you too. Sighing, Naruto flared his chakra, which had two affects. Yes, it served the purpose of getting their attention, but due to where their minds had been before, it made some of the girls become very sticky in their no-no bits. Coughing into his hand, he spoke. Girls, we need to get this worked out. As much as I enjoy having possibly some of the hottest girls in the nations fighting over me, it's got to stop. Ino took advantage of this, and wrapping her arms around her crushes, she stuck her tongue out and said, "Yeah, he picks me, so the rest of you get out of here." Right as the girls opened their mouth to voice their opinions on that, Naruto spoke up. "Girls, that's what I'm talking about. I thought I would eventually be able to choose just one of you, but each of you holds my interest and some cases my heart for different reasons." Releasing his arm out of Ino's vice grip and turning to the Genjutsu mistress, he continued, "Yakumo, you were the first actual friend I made in this hellhole. You helped me through a lot, and you've just got this charm to you that I can't resist. I need you to keep me calm." Leaving a blushing brunette, he turned to the Yamanaka. "Ino, you were the second person to become my friend, and you've also helped me through some stuff. I find you so beautiful it's crazy. But you're also really bossy, but that's good. I need you to keep me in line." Turning from the stubbornly blushing blonde, he looked at the Yuki heiress. "Haku, I've only known you for a couple of days, but you and I share such a similar past, it's scary sometimes. Your beautiful porcelain face is digging its way into my heart day by day. I need you to ease the pain of my past." Haku blushed as he moved his attention to the Kiri rebel leader. "May I've only known you for maybe 2 days at most, and I can't say that you're special to me." Hearing that, the redhead lowered her head. "But..." Here Naruto lifted it up, forcing her to look him in the eyes. "I know in time you will be. For the short time I've known you, I couldn't imagine going forward without you." Breathing in, he continued, "Guess we gotta thank the Shodame for making the CRA, huh?" he said, nervously grinning. He had just asked some very powerful kunoichi if they were willing to share him. This could either end really great for him or really bad. "You know, Naruto-kun, if they turn you down, you always have me." And Naruto was put into panic mode yet again. Sure, the girls, Mei included, knew about his Jinchuriki status, but they didn't know that his bijou was female, and was also vying for his affections. Before you girls say anything, I think there's something, someone you should know about," he said, only receiving deadpan looks in return. "Well, you all know about my fuzzy little problem, right?" They nodded with the same looks. "Wheelil, it turns out Shisajirlansha wants Stobamamate." At their very confused expressions, he sighed. "Maybe it would be better if I showed you what I meant." Naruto performed a sealess Kage Bunshin and then reached down to his shirt. He lifted it up, exposing his hardened abs to the already drooling girls. He bore his fair share of scars from his life, but they only enhanced the hotness rating the blonde had. Concentrating his chakra, the hack no Fuinshiki, 8 trigram seal, became clearly visible on his navel. Keeping his chakra flowing, Naruto began flowing his Namikaze chakra and Yoki in equal amounts into his right hand. Naruto at this point had closed his eyes and was sweating, as he had to be extremely careful with what he was doing. If he allowed too little or too much of one of the different energies to flow in his arm, well, let's just say he would have to start using only one-handed seals from then on. He had done some experimenting and found that the 3 energies seemed to have a sort of pattern to them. His Uzumaki and Namikaze energies could commingle with no backlash. In fact, the product of the 2 being used was astounding. He could construct matter and even energy itself when doing so, and he could also destroy it on a cellular level, something that went against the very laws of physics. It made sense, though. Namikaze chakra was the power of manipulation. It allowed him to manipulate any and everything as he pleased. Uzumaki chakra dealt with matter, the creation and destruction of it. Mixing the two made him damn close to being a god. As such, he had taken to calling this transcendence. Yes, I stole it from Bleach tongue sticking out. When he mixed Uzumaki and Yoki together, he gained another surprise. When the two mixed in any manner, he gained the ability to use nature chakra in its purest form. With that came the ability to control all the elements in their rawest forms and boosted physical prowess to unprecedented levels, even by ninja standards. Of course, this was Sage mode. However, he still had his drawbacks. When he entered Transcendence, he could not use any jutsu that involved the elements. He guessed that due to his physical and spiritual limitations as a human, his body sacrificed its link to nature to allow him to enter this transcendent state. Much the same in Sage mode, he could not use any Jikoken jutsu. Due to how the two modes deactivated the other when he entered them, this also meant that his healing factor was also weakened. He was of course extremely hard to kill in either state, but it was much easier to do compared to when he allowed all three energies to flow through him naturally. Another drawback was the concentration involved in calling upon these states. It took him at least a minute and a half to enter the states, and in the world of Nin, that small window could mean death for him or those he was protecting. Seeing the success of mixing Uzumaki energy with the other energy sources, he tried to the same with Namikaze and Yoki energy. The result had not been fun. It seemed that due to the personality and nature of the two energies, they warred against the other. After some thought, it made sense. The nature of Namikaze chakra was almost godly, meaning it was not of this world, not of nature in other words. Yoki, especially the Yoki he received from Kyuubi and was making into his own, was nothing but nature. It was the essence of nature, emotions. As such, the two clashed and could not mix properly without repercussions. Being a stubborn Uzumaki, though, he would not leave it at that. Through trial and severe errors, he had found that if balanced to perfect and equal amounts, the two would not fight or cancel the other out. Instead, he was gifted with the ability to manipulate the elements, life, and even human emotions. Doing so unsettled Naruto greatly. Being an empath showed him how vital and important human emotions were to life. For him to take control of them or even overwrite them with his own was sickening. He had sworn to himself that he would never use that power if he could help it. However, he found that mixing the two, when applied to the ninja arts, gave him some amazing power in both Nin, Gen, and Fuinjutsu. In regards to Fuinjutsu, it allowed him to write seals anywhere he pleased, even in the very air in front of him. It also allowed him to rearrange pre-existing seals to his liking, which is what led to what he was currently about to do. Taking advantage of this power over seals, he was about to attempt something he had actually never tried before, bringing the Kyuubi out of her seal into the real world. Her physical body had been destroyed when she was sealed the first time by the Shodame and Mito, but being a massive constructive chakra, he could use his own Yoki and hers to construct a new one thanks to his Namikaze chakra. Well, that's how he thought it would work in theory. He heard the girl's gasp as he felt his arm become covered in the two fighting energies. When he felt that he had enough, he reached for his seal. He felt his arm literally sink into his stomach as if his body was made of nothing but liquid. He dug around until he felt what he knew to be the Kyuubi. As he wrapped his hand around her, he could hear her screaming, "Naruto-kun? What are you doing? Stop. Please stop. Naruto, you'll dash." The last thing the blonde saw before his world exploded in pain like never before was a flash of red and the screams of "Naruto." Naruto awoke to find himself in his room in the Namikaze clan house. He had received the right to live in it shortly after becoming a genin, as his heritage was finally revealed. Naruto looked up, half expecting to find the girls around him, only to see a sea of red. Naruto knew that this wasn't Mei, as her hair wasn't red so much as it was an auburn. No, the sea of hair was a very familiar shade of blood red. Running his hands through the soft locks, he thought, guess it worked after all. But where are the others? They would have told the Hokage and Kakashi what happened, so where is everyone? The owner of the red hair moaned in content at the pleasurable feeling she was currently receiving and attempted to snuggle deeper into the source of warmth she was hugging. Finding the Kyuubi's actions adorable, he begrudgingly stopped his own actions and shook the bijou. "Sorry, Q-chan, but you gotta get up now. I kinda wanna move around now." He saw a single crimson-colored eye peek out from the similarly colored hair and retreat back into his abdomen, getting a 5 more minutes Naruto-kun as a reply. His only response was to sweat drop at his current situation. Geez, I released the most powerful creature on Earth using dangerous methods, and all said being is worried about is 5 more minutes of nap time. Before he could try to awaken the woman again, said woman's eyes snapped open in realization. In seconds, a beautiful pair of blood-red eyes stared back into his own baby blues before he was pinned to the bed by a sobbing Bijou. He wrapped his arms around the crying woman and rubbed her back, attempting to soothe her. Kyubi lifted her head again, showing Naruto her puffy eyes. You baka idiot! What the fuck made you think that was a good idea? Do you have any idea what could have dash? Only to be silenced by her container slamming his lips onto hers in a passionate kiss which she quickly melted into. All previous anger and worry replaced by love and passion. True Naruto had only known that Kyubi was a female for a month now, but he always felt close to the demoness before. She had been one of 2 people who cared enough to actively try and help him regardless of the repercussions when he was young. In the beginning, it had all seemed for the fox's own selfish benefit, but after years of getting to know her personality, he knew there was an undertone of care beneath it all. He grew close to her as the fox, creating their bond much before he had even met Yakumo and befriended her. Besides his one-time sensei, Vincent, the Kyubi had been his only friend and being he could fully trust. Finding out she was female combined with his growing into his hormones had made that bond different. He cared for and liked the other girls, of course, but the feelings he had for his tenant were different, deeper. In all honesty, he could safely say that what he felt for her was love. Being his first true love and the being that had been with him literally since the beginning, it was only fitting that she was his first kiss. Kyubi felt much the same. Seeing Naruto triumph over everything life had thrown his way was inspiring to her. She had lived for hundreds of years before she was contained and had met her fair share of powerful individuals. Hell, she was sealed into 2, and those 2 were married to equally powerful individuals. They all had their tragic stories. Such was the world they lived in, but Naruto's story? It struck a chord in her, maybe because she was at fault for his lack of parents in a way, or maybe because he reminded her of her father, the Rikudo Sannin. Whatever the reason, she found herself truly drawn to him like no other. Being as beautiful and powerful as she was, she had her fair share of suitors. Heck, even some of the other Bijou had pursued her at one time. But she had turned them down. None of them had what she was looking for. Sure, they were strong, looked good, all of that, but that was it. Naruto. He would one day even topple her in terms of power. He was very attractive and would only age to become even more so. And his aura, his emotions, they were not pure. It was odd to her. His aura was far from pure, but neither was it evil. He seemed to walk the very fine line between the 2 in that gray area. It was all of this, the very person that was Naruto Uzumaki Namale's, that she had found herself in love with. She had thought they would never work, being that she was an immortal and him a mortal, but as his heritage was revealed and just what he would become came to light, that seemed to matter less and less. Now he himself would one day become an immortal on the scale of a god. Any other reason for her thinking it would not work was stupid, and she knew it, so she took her chance. She had made it seem like she just wanted him because he was powerful, but she did so only out of fear of his rejection, but considering the position she was currently in, she didn't think he would turn her down. The need for air eventually surfaced and the 2 parted, staring into the other's eyes. The Kyubi focused as much of her thought processes as she could, but due to her jumbled state of mind, all that came out was, "What? Why? How?" Only to be shushed by Naruto's lips meeting hers once more. Before they could lose themselves to the passion once more, the blonde pulled away. Grinning at the beautiful redhead in front of him, he chuckled softly and said, "Empath, remember?" The Kyubi grinned, then began to laugh in her melodious voice. "How could I forget?" Stopping her laughter and leaning her forehead against Naruto's, she looked him in the eye and asked, "So what now?" "I don't know. I hadn't really planned for any of this to happen the way it did. I didn't know what—" "Oh shit. Q," he said as he began to panic. The Kyubi's eyes shone in worry as she asked, What's wrong?" "The backlash." "What was the backlash?" the panicking blonde said. Now it was Kyubi's turn to shush the blonde with a kiss. Pulling away and stroking Naruto's jawline with a well-manicured finger, she breathed out, "Easy there. Calm down. Nothing too bad." At his curious glance, she motioned for him to sit up. Doing so, he found the Kyubi making herself comfortable on his lap. After doing so, she continued, "Well, due to what you did and the properties of the 2 energies, you threw the seal into chaos. The seal is almost sentient in a way, as it is powered by the Shinigami himself. As such, it began to panic when you threw a wrench into its plans, so it did what it thought to be the best solution. And that would be? As I left, the seal only allowed what it deemed to be enough out, keeping about 8 tails of my yoki locked inside it. As such as it stands, I only wield 1 tail of my power while the rest has been left to you. Being that there was not a conscience tied to the power, the seal was able to accelerate the rate at which it was working. All in all, this means that instead of 9 tails of yoki being siphoned into you until you were about 19, the process will now end 2 years ahead of schedule, when you turn 17. And does that mean I'll turn into a Hanyu, half-demon, when I'm 17? Nestling her head in the crook of Naruto's shoulders, the demoness hummed. That I do not know. Though we are still bonded at the soul, I no longer have such access to your body or mind. The seal made sure of that much. Wrapping his arms around Kyubi and pulling her in closer, the blonde pondered aloud. This means that you are now pretty much completely free of the seal, with the small exception that should I die you will to correct? Feeling the redhead nod against his shoulder, he continued. Then I can only assume that I will become a Hanyu due to our bond and the massive amount of yoki I now wield. You are incorrect, intoned the raspy voice of his ancestor. Then what will happen? I highly doubt that having 8 tails of yoki in a human body would end in any sort of pleasant manner. You have 10 tails of yoki. You had already absorbed 1 full tail of her yoki when you awoke me and your Namikaze's blood. After your experiment, the seal allotted you another tail so that you did not die. Her yoki regenerates at an alarming pace, and so each tail she lost was regained in days. The seal then took 8 of her 9, meaning that at your current state you have 2 full tails in your own yoki and 8 tails of hers that are currently being turned into your own. But how does any of that mean I won't turn into a Hanyu? With 10 tails, there should be no way I could remain human and keep such a massive amount of power without being torn asunder by it. Normally, yes, but you and your situation are far from normal. Your body has had yoki, uzumaki, and Namikaze energy flowing through it since the day of your conception in your mother's womb. Yes, most of it lay dormant and inaccessible to you, most still does, but it ran through your body nonetheless. Your body has thusly made the proper adjustments to allow your continued existence without backlash. In essence, your body will remain as it is, but more and more Uzumaki and Namikaze energy will become available to you as her yoki does to keep a balance. Why do you say, as it is and not human? Because you are not human. What you are exactly, even I do not know. No other creature or being in existence has ever had demon, god, and the blood of man running through its veins at one time. Many have attempted to create a being like you throughout all of time, and all have failed. Your existence alone defies all universal laws and logic. I see. Boy, do not take this as a mark of evil of some kind, for it is not. You are a better man than any of those in your village. You are a better demon than any in hell, and you are a better god than those that look down on us. Always remember who you are and what you stand for, and none of that will change. Power is neither good nor bad, but it is the intent in which it used that makes it so. Yoki can be used to heal, and human chakra can be used to bring death. Remember your resolve and never falter, or you will fall. Stand strong and proud, my descendant. Kyubi looked in awe as Naruto's eyes changed from their normal sapphire blue to a shade of such purple that it brought to mind something of royalty. Not only that, but she could feel his very being pulse with the power inside of it. It sent out waves, almost like standing on a shore and feeling the small waves of the ocean lap at your feet. The waves that hit you did nothing but lick at your ankles, but you could see how vast and powerful the body they came from was, and that was what she felt from Naruto. Across the village, Sarutobi Hiruzen stared in the direction of the Namikaze home from his balcony, hands crossed behind his back. All he could do was smile and cry silently. To think the boy he had a hand in ruining would grow to become such a man. He shook his head in remorse and turned to resume his work. At Training Ground 7, standing in front of the memorial stone, Kakashi smiled. Your parents would be so proud of you, Otuto. Across the great village of Kanahegakure no Sato all felt it. Waves of power lapping at them, and they smiled. With the waves came a sense of warmth and a resolution to protect. On the waves created by a maelstrom among the whirlpools was the will of fire, and it burned brightly, fueled by the maelstrom's winds. Atop the Hokage monument stood a figure cloaked in a familiar black cloak. The figure chuckled and said in a deep voice, "It seems that you've been doing some training." Let's see just how much you've grown, my student. And, okay, you have to agree this would have been such a great place to end it, but I won't do that to you guys, haha, so back to the story. After explaining what Yamato had told him to Kyubi, she agreed that he would need to train even more now. That much power left unchecked and not knowing how to properly use it was idiotic on all levels. Naruto had gotten fully dressed, something he questioned a blushing Kitsune about, and was ready to go find the girls when he sensed ill intent aimed at Kyubi. Immediately he jumped towards her, taking her to the ground with him, and just in time, as not even nanoseconds later an arrow flew through the window and stuck itself inches deep into the wall. They both got to their feet and checked the arrow, finding a note with it. Naruto ripped it off and read aloud, "I would not waste my time looking for your girls, as they are currently in my very capable hands. I must say I am jealous of the very lovely ladies you have. Beautiful doesn't do them justice. I must say I am inclined to try and persuade them to join me. You are more than welcome to defend yourself, but I would hurry. I am not one for games, so come find me in the forest behind the Hokage monument." By the time the paper hit the ground, Naruto and Kyubi were gone. Kyubi may not like the girls for trying to take what was hers, but she knew Naruto cared for them, so she would help where she could. Mere minutes later we find Naruto, his red-haired demoness, Kakashi, and Zabuza, leaping through the trees of the forests of Konoha, already having passed the monument. The latte were members of the group, having joined them after seeing the two speeding through the city and being told of the situation. They still had no idea who Kyubi was, but accepted Naruto's answer of, a good friend. Using his empath sense, he was able to sense the girls' fear and worry. Accompanying those was nothing. He knew whoever had kidnapped them was around somewhere, but he couldn't sense him. Turning to Kyubi, she shook her in a negative, showing that not even her superior senses could pick up anything but the girls. Landing on a tree, Naruto saw the waterfall he and the others had stopped at on their way back to Konoha, and looking at the top of the waterfall, he saw the girls roped together and dangling over the edge. Before he could do anything, Naruto felt someone appear behind him, and he turned to see someone bind and gag Kyubi, Kakashi, and Zabuza before they too disappeared. By this point Naruto was beyond furious, but seeing Kyubi being taken too and the panicked look in her eyes sent him over the edge. He allowed the rage he felt take him over, and with it came his yoki, cloaking him in its fiery embrace. His eyes bled into a red, the shade of blood, with a black pupil. His nails grew sharper, his whiskers darkened, and his teeth sharpened, making his canines poke out from his lip. The tree he stood withered and blackened under the malevolent aura. He looked up, sensing another presence, and midway up to the waterfall on an outcropping of rocks stood a man. The man was dressed in a plain black shirt, black pants, and black boots. His greasy black hair shined in the midday sun in contrast to his pale complexion. On his face was a twisted grin, showing the pleasure he took in the moment. In his right hand was a plain broadsword with a golden handle. The man's twisted grin turned into one of strain as he brought his sword up, blocking Naruto's downward strike with his own katana. The air around the two rippled from the force, and soon the ground around the man's feet cratered from the force of the hit. In a surprising show of strength, the man pushed against Naruto and with a thrust tossed Naruto out into the air. He soon jumped from his perch, speeding towards Naruto, a crazed grin on his face. Again the battling pair clashed swords, causing yet another ripple in the air from the pressure being exerted. Naruto again lost the clash and was sent plummeting towards the ground. Upon impact, a massive cloud of dirt and rubble was kicked up. Not giving the blonde time to breathe, the man vanished. The cloud of dust and debris was blown away, revealing that the two had once more connected blades, sending another ripple through the air. Naruto's group looked in horror as they saw the mangled form of Naruto. The impact had broken his left arm, leaving it dangling at an odd angle, and his leg was in much the same condition, and he had suffered a massive head injury shown by the blood coloring his once golden blonde hair. Naruto sent a pulse of chakra through his body, almost instantly healing what would have been fatal wounds. Before Naruto could begin to form one-handed seals, the man introduced his fist to Naruto's face, sending several teeth flying, and a nasty crunch showing his nose had also been broken badly. Naruto's neck snapped back painfully and he was sent tumbling from the impact. Before he could struggle to his feet, the broadsword was stabbed into the ground only centimeters from his head. The stranger leaned down and whispered into the anger-fueled blonde's ear, "I told you before, anger will blind and bind, didn't I?" The stranger walked to the opposite side of the clearing calmly standing as Naruto burst out into laughter. The cloak of Yoki faded along with the characteristics it had made. Naruto used his katana as a cane and struggled to his feet before once more using his chakra to heal his wounds. Brandishing his katana on his shoulder, Naruto shook his head before saying, "And I've said it before, you are one sick bastard, Vincent-sensei." The two burst into laughter, deeply confusing and worrying the others. Before they could blink, they saw the two disappear and reappear next to them. The girls began to squirm at the sight of the man, but Naruto waved his hands in a placating manner. "Don't worry, girls, he won't do anything to you, I promise." As they undid the cloth around everyone's mouths, Ino retorted, "Oh really? The guy who kidnapped us and then bound and gagged us hundreds of feet above a waterfall won't hurt us?" The man chuckled and replied, "Hey, I didn't hurt you though." He received several hate-filled glares as a response. The girls were finally freed and they all glomped Naruto, near suffocating the lucky bastard. Vincent just chuckled at the sight of his student's predicament. My, I didn't think I had trained such a ladies' man." Naruto untangled himself from the pile of limbs and nervously scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, wasn't exactly my plan, but it happened." Vincent clasped his student on the shoulder and with a serious look in his eyes said, "Happens to the best of us, it does, my young Padawan." Getting a very confused look from Naruto, Vincent chuckled again and waved him off. "Inside joke, kiddo." "So what are you here for, sensei? And why do you look like that?" Looking down at his form, Vincent's sweat dropped. "Oops, totally forgot about that." With a wave of his hand, his body shimmered and was replaced by someone totally different. The man they saw now stood at a solid 6 foot and was clothed in what looked to be leather plants with a silver-studded belt on his waist. His feet were covered by a pair of ankle-black boots with silver clasps going up their sides with his pants tucked into them. Covering his abdomen was a black vest with various clasps with silver metal on its front. From the sides were thin silver chains that connected the back and front pieces. He wore nothing underneath and the vest only stopped just above the belt, which left a lot of his tan skin showing. His arms were also left bare, showing his compact muscles, and various tattoos dotted his arms, some big and some small. His face changed to match his skin color and sharpened into regal features with high cheekbones and a set of piercing purple eyes. His hair fell in layers of black and streaks of red and blue. His bangs were swept up and to his right along with the rest of his rather long hair. It all fell messily around his shoulders but was still somehow kept out of his face. They were shocked when even his blade shimmered and morphed. What was once a plain broadsword was now a double-edged broadsword of beauty and death. The pommel was a rather plain rectangle with a small link of chain dangling from it, and the handle was wrapped in black leather. Stitched into the leather in red was a phoenix in flight, and on the other side was a wyvern dragon stitched in blue. The cross-guard was a shining metal in the form of black and silver flames. The blade itself was made of what looked to be obsidian and absorbed all light around it, yet the fuller one was a shining silver. "They're all better," chuckled the man. "As for why I'm here," he hefted his sword and pointed it at Naruto. "To test you, of course. Can't have you growing weak now, can I?" Naruto grinned excitedly. "Course not." Their forms both vanished from sight, and the group turned to look down from the waterfall to see them standing across from each other in the clearing once more. Mei and Ino were going to try and jump down but were held back by Kyubi and Kakashi. They both gave them irritated looks, thinking they were stopping them from seeing their crush. However, with her eyes still on the clearing, Kyubi spoke. "No, we must stay here. This test will push Naruto to use every trick and technique in his arsenal, and his sensei will not be holding back either." Ino huffed out, "So?" Kyubi cast a glare at the blonde before returning her gaze to the clearing with Kakashi taking over. "You know about how strong Naruto is and how destructive some of his techniques can be, correct?" The girls all nodded. "Yes, well, this is the man responsible for teaching him most of those. He also taught Naruto the basics of Ken and Taijutsu. This man is every bit as powerful as Naruto. I can only guess how insanely strong he is, maybe even on the level of a bijou." "I would have to agree with you, Scarecrow," thought Kyubi. "This means the safest place we can be is all the way up here. Maybe." The girls all grew serious and looked to the clearing as they realized how right Kakashi could be. They knew Naruto was strong, but he was still a student, and that man, Vincent, was the teacher, and the teacher was usually much stronger than the student. "Hey kiddo, I ain't going easy on you this time around, so you better pull out all the stops. Vincent said with a grin. Naruto sent a pulse of chakra out, disabling all the various weight and gravity seals he had on his body. Grinning his foxy grin, Naruto called back, "You too, sensei." And Vincent did the same, except the pulse he sent out cratered the ground around his feet, and the group gasped as they felt the wave of energy hit them. With a grin, the two lowered their bodies to their ground in preparation. As if given an unseen signal, the two blurred from everyone's sight, even Kakashi's Sharingan enhanced sight. They only reappeared in the middle of the clearing sword crossing sword, and seconds after the ground underneath them exploded under the pressure. A wave of air was released from the clash with enough force to impact the waterfall and cease its flow for a few seconds. The two combatants stared into the other's eyes, a grin of excitement and adrenaline on their faces because of this student-teacher match. It was Naruto's time to show the man who had saved his life what the product of his decision had wrought. This was the one person in all existence whose approval meant something to him, and he was willing to bleed for it. As the flow of the waterfall fell once more, the two vanished again. Last time. As if given an unseen signal, the two blurred from everyone's sight, even Kakashi's Sharingan enhanced sight. They only reappeared in the middle of the clearing sword crossing sword, and seconds after the ground underneath them exploded under the pressure. A wave of air was released from the clash with enough force to impact the waterfall and cease its flow for a few seconds. The two combatants stared into the other's eyes, a grin of excitement and adrenaline on their faces because of this student-teacher match. It was Naruto's time to show the man who had saved his life what the product of his decision had wrought. This was the one person in all existence whose approval meant something to him, and he was willing to bleed for it. As the flow of the waterfall fell once more, the two vanished again. Futon, Atsugai, wind release, pressure damage. Naruto called out as aimed his palm at his sensei. The blast hit the area, and the shockwaves caused by the compressed tornado were felt by those atop the waterfall. Vincent had been long gone before then, though, and reappeared behind Naruto, blade poised to pierce the blonde through the back. Naruto had sensed Vincent just as he arrived behind him thanks to his instincts and managed to spin to the right, and using the momentum from his spin attempted a horizontal slash. To the surprise of everyone but Naruto, Vincent caught the blade with his bare hand as it neared his neck. Before Vincent could take advantage of the situation, Naruto blurred away, leaving his katana in Vincent's possession. Before Naruto could do much else, Vincent was on him, Naruto's katana held in a reverse position. Naruto ducked under the swipe from his own blade but was unprepared for Vincent's kick. Vincent's boot met Naruto's chin, sending the blonde teen skyrocketing into the air at breakneck speeds. A lesser being would have surely been decapitated by the force of that kick, but Naruto was not a lesser being. Still, he could feel the shattered pieces of his jawbone and teeth rattle around in his mouth. Bearing the pain, he felt his healing factor kick in, and in no time at all his mouth was repaired to perfection again. He was unable to rest though, because as he reached the peak of his impromptu flight, reaching halfway up the waterfall, he saw his sensei throw his katana back at him like it were a spear. Righting himself in the air, Naruto caught his blade in a reverse grip and, using his mastery over wind nature, propelled himself with a boost of wind from his feet, sending him speeding like a rocket back towards the ground. Just as he was about to impact, Naruto sent wind chakra through his blade. Vincent brought up his own sword, meeting the blonde rocket head-on. The two clashed and for a second time seemed to have stopped. As it resumed, the ground underneath Vincent exploded, creating a crater underneath him easily 10 feet deep and sending waves of air that stripped some of the closer trees of their leaves. Vincent was no pushover, however, and had maintained his position, levitating over the crater and still holding back Naruto with only one hand on his blade. This did not mean he was without injury, though. As the blades met each other, Naruto had cleverly released his control over the wind coursing around his blade, showering Vincent in thousands of tiny wind blades, leaving his sword arm looking like it had gone through a meat grinder. Atop the waterfall, the group watched in awe as this had all taken place in the span of a minute or so. Both Kakashi and Zabuza had lived through the Third Great Shinobi War and had seen some of the most powerful ninja to walk the world, like Minato Namake's clash against other titans of power, but these two were insane. Even Kyuubi was shocked at the display of power. She herself had fought in battles against the other Bijou that were still spoken of in fear of their power, and these two were easily coming close to that. What shocked her even more was that she knew that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Neither had begun to use their truly destructive techniques or release their hold on their power. At a certain level of power, there was just no way to be able to control it all, it was just impossible. So instead, to keep their power from constantly leaking out and affecting others around them, beings like Naruto herself and Vincent would use some of their power to keep the other part of their power under lock and key, restricting themselves to only a portion of their true potential. The girls were just as shocked. Mei had been rather young by the end of the Third Shinobi War and so had not seen some of the massive damage wrought by titans like Hanzo and the other Kages. Still, she was the Kiri rebel leader and had seen the power of a fully realized Jinchuriki thanks to Yagura, and that was the only thing she could compare this battle to. The younger girls could only gape in shock. They had heard tales of the battles waged in the previous wars by people like the Sannin, and even their own Hokage, and they realized that this is what it must have been like to those that saw such battles. To think that their world was full of individuals who had attained such power. And what made it even more shocking was that Naruto had always said that compared to people like his sensei or the other Kages, he was not that strong. Sure, he could fight on even ground with some of the weaker Kages like the current Kazekage, but against people like Hanzo he was nothing. He had even admitted that against a Sarutobi in his prime, he would have been hard-pressed to come out with the win without using his other forms. Vincent used his strength and forced Naruto away. Naruto flipped and landed on the ground, grinning the same grin Vincent was. As Vincent felt the gashes on his arm knit themselves closed, he called out, "That was a nice little warm-up, any?" Shock coursed through their viewers at that statement. Their warm-up was equal to that of a Kage battle? Tilting his neck side to side to crack it, Naruto nodded. "Yeah, really got the blood pumping, so no holds bar now." Vincent nodded in response. Naruto finally let go of the control he had over his power, and as he did, the chakra he naturally leaked out began to visibly coalesce around him in the color of a dark blue cloak with flecks of gold and red dotting it. Vincent did the same, and a cloak easily dwarfing Naruto's own covered him. His was a shade of a royal purple with occasional strips of black and white being seen. Vincent swiped his sword out horizontally, calling out, "Motoresu Mokushi, bring the apocalypse," creating a blade of energy that bore the same color as his cloak. The swathe of energy was easily the size of a small house, and as it went it tore apart the very ground itself, further damaging the clearing. Naruto answered with his own technique. Rantun, Kairhandun, Storm Release, Judgment Cut. And from his blade came a swathe of energy equally as large as Vincent's, bearing Naruto's own unique chakra coloration. Rather than wait and see whose technique would win out, the two warriors flowed chakra through their respective blade, and as their techniques clashed, so too did their blades. Sword and energy grinded against each other. Sparks and shockwaves flew from the epicenter of this battle until eventually it was too much and both masses of energy imploded, encasing the two combatants. The audience waited with bated breath, waiting to see who had won the battle. All present knew whoever had won that struggle would no doubt have won the battle. As the dust cleared, the girls gasped and Kakashi gritted his teeth. Vincent stood, his sword arm drenched in blood, the blood of his student. His beautifully crafted sword was buried up to the hilt directly in the center of Naruto's stomach. However, the dust cleared even more to reveal Naruto's blade. Naruto's own blade was sheathed in the dead center of Vincent's chest. The two locked eyes and grinned at the other before Naruto coughed out a glob of blood. The blood began to freely flow from his mouth, and he let go of his grip on his katana and fell to his knees. Vincent then withdrew his blade from Naruto, causing even more blood to pour out of the hole in his stomach now that there wasn't something blocking its escape. Normally the wound would have begun to heal, but since Vincent's blade had been coated in his energy, Naruto's healing factor had been stalled. Vincent then grabbed the hilt of Naruto's katana and ripped it out from his chest cavity with a pained grunt. Immediately his body began to stitch up the hole, looking like a sewer was weaving a piece of cloth back together. He then threw Naruto over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, sheathed Naruto's katana into his belt, and blurred away, appearing atop the waterfall behind the group. As soon as they sensed him, they ran to him as he placed Naruto's body in the shallow end of the river that became the waterfall. Before the girls could throw out accusations at him, he kneeled down and covered his hands in healing chakra. Instead of focusing on the wound itself, he pushed the healing chakra into the flesh around the wound, giving his body enough energy to jumpstart his healing factor. He then picked him up in much the same style as before, to the girl's ire, and nodded his head in a motion to follow him. Naruto awoke with a groan of pain. Opening his eyes, he was glad that whoever had put him in his room had the courtesy to close the blinds. Forcing himself into a sitting position, he stretched out all the kinks in his body before swinging his legs to the side of the bed. Scratching his head, he wondered where everybody is. Hearing laughter and sensing people in his kitchen, he threw on a loose and light shirt and ventured downstairs. Opening the doorway to his rather large kitchen, he grinned at the sight before him. His sensei, along with his girls, Kakashi, and Zabuza, were sitting around the table laughing and having a good time. Zabuza, May, and Vincent all had bottles of beer in their hand, and even Kakashi had joined in the festivities and had taken his mask off. This had of course shocked Ino and Yakumo, who knew Kakashi hardly if ever took off his mask for some reason unknown to them. Even still, they didn't know why. Aside from the scar on his eye that bore his Sharingan, his face was blemish-free. The girls agreed that Kakashi could indeed be counted as handsome. Regardless, they had moved on and were now enjoying themselves, telling funny stories and laughing about life and just enjoying themselves. Everyone there could be visibly seen relaxing. Zabuza and Vincent's blades were nowhere to be seen, and no one had pouches on them carrying any kind of weapons. Kakashi was without his mask and flak jacket. The girls weren't wearing their headbands, and Naruto realized that he himself was looking rather relaxed in his thin shirt, barefoot, and in his pants. With a grin, he walked into the kitchen. "Hey sensei, toss me one ya." Vincent and all present looked up and smiled. "Sure thing, kiddo. Pull up a chair and join us." Catching the bottle tossed at him, Naruto did just that. "Despite all the crap I've been through and the things I'll have to face in the future, at least I have these people here. Guess this is what it's like to have a family. Vincent was the father I never had, Kakashi my brother, Zabuza the weird uncle, and my girls, well, my girls. I sense a storm coming, but enjoy these moments, young one. Even warriors like us need our rest." Looking around the table and all the happy faces around him, Naruto grinned. "Well, whatever it is, let it come. I'll be ready." And the night continued like that, everyone there enjoying the break from the violence and stress of their lives and their jobs. At that moment, they were not shinobi, they were not trained killers, Kyuubi was not a force of nature, there was no worries, they were all just them. Human, demon, or god, it didn't matter. What mattered was the people around them. In a room dimly lit by lights of blues and yellows and covered in mirrors and cloaks of various sizes and types, of being cloaked in a blue trench coat kneeled before a throne. On the throne sat a man who looked to be well into his life, yet still his body and muscles retained the power of youth. He was covered in a robe that mirrored the room almost exactly. His face was grizzled and wizened with a set of piercing smoke-gray eyes set in them. Hair the same shade of gray fell in straight locks to his shoulders. Held in his right hand was a staff. Atop the staff was a globe, and in the globe was a double-sided cloak, and stars flittered inside. In a gruff and rumbling voice, the figure on the throne spoke. "So is it true? Has one of them finally resurfaced?" The man in the blue trench coat replied, "Yes, sir. It seems that bloodline still exists in one of the worlds." "How does he fare against the Avarok beasts?" "He was able to dispatch a pack rather easily, sir. Send one of your men along with a group of Danar. I want him taken care of at any cost. Do not make me interfere like I had to last time." The man in the blue trench coat gulped. "Yes, sir. I won't fail you this time." "Do not." After a pause, the man continued, "Leave and do as I say." The man in the trench coat nodded his head and scurried out of the room. Without turning his head or anything else, spoke again. "Why are you here, Shinigami?" From the shadows of the room emerged a man who towered over most at an imposing 6 feet 5 inches, cloaked in a black coat with ragged ends. From under the cloak exhumed a black mist. The cloak's sleeves covered his arms, and its hood shadowed the man's face, only revealing what looked to be a pearly white lower jawbone. "I am only here to warn you, Kronos. The boy you want dead is one of Kami's chosen, and she has declared as such. Not only that, but Vincent has taken the boy under his wing and trained him." Scoffing, the now named Kronos spoke in arrogance. "So what, are Kami and that damned Valentine now able to interfere in my domain?" "No, Kronos, he has only been gifted with some of your domain's powers like the Valentine. If you continue to interfere, you will fall at his hands, and he will take your spot in the council," spoke the calm, raspy voice of the Shinigami. They said the same thing about my son Zeus, and look at him now. He is nothing compared to us among the council. True as that is, you were still overthrown by him. He now controls that world and its gods, lesser they might be. Enough! That damned Valentine having as much power of my domain as me has long since grated on my nerves, but I will not allow some pathetic human to wield what is mine," roared the now standing Kronos. As he spoke, the whole room they were in shook. Yet Shinigami stood perfectly still, not at all impressed or shocked by God's outburst. "Vincent wields the power of almost all our domains, Kronos. Such was it decided by the council and him, long before you had claimed your title. The Valentine line has always wielded those powers and served as his right hand, and they will continue to do so. You are interfering in things you should not be, Kronos." "No, Shinigami, you are. This is my domain, and I will do as I see fit. Just because you have allowed the humans and some of their worlds to assume some of your duties does not mean I will do the same. Leave!" Kronos vehemently roared. Shaking his head, Shinigami began to fade back into the shadows, his parting words being, "Seems that the young boy will soon be one of us, and it will be by your own hands that you will fall, Kronos." Roaring in anger as the last bit of Shinigami faded from his realm, he stalked to the balcony that overlooked his massive castle. "I will not be made a fool of. I am Kronos, god of space and time, and none shall take that from me."